And 10. Birthday Boy. Ray Salinger was a serial killer who operated in Gotham under the alias Birthday Boy, and he was actually the first costumed criminal encountered by Batman in his crime-fighting career. Introduced in Batman Earth 1 Volume 1 in June 2012, Birthday Boy is fascinated by young girls resembling his first kill. When in his killer mode, he wears a burlap sack with holes cut out for the eyes and a birthday party hat, usually in a room decorated like a birthday party. As a calling card, he left birthday candles where he stole away his victims and told his victims to make a wish that was decorated with the words "Happy Birthday Amanda," which is only creepier since we have Amanda here. And I feel like this guy is a representation of all of her DMs. That's right, I'm calling all of you nerds out. I think the sickest part of this character though was when he first started the whole Birthday Boy thing. He had been hired by Mayor Oswald Cobblepot to eliminate various enemies. In return, he was given girls from the streets or enemies of the Penguin as a reward. And at 9, Professor Pig. Professor Pig originally debuted in the alternate reality story of Batman number 666, which I love. He also debuted as a corpse, which I love even more. However, he was introduced as a recurring character in 2009 in Batman and Robin number 1. In Batman Reborn, Laszlo Valentine was an extreme circus mob boss until something turned him into Professor Pig, leading him to begin funding his scientific experiments by selling narcotics to the criminal underworld. All in all, he's an extremely disturbing villain, and that makes me think about why people aren't afraid of pigs as much as they are clowns, because if you ask me, this guy is freaking horrifying, okay? Professor Pig, if you couldn't tell, actually wears a pig mask, along with a butcher's apron, and what at times appears to be some form of hastily thrown together surgical outfit, like he got it from like Wish. Or he got it from like Party City. It's freaking weird. Also ends up brainwashing and controlling various people who he calls his Dolotrons. Like, I don't know what else there is to do other than just run away, so I'm gonna move on now. Although next time I have a pet pig in Minecraft, I know what I'm naming him. And at 8, Bootface. Okay, this guy's origin is the reason I wanted to talk about him. This guy's origin was simply him getting kicked in the face by Batman, and that's it, I'm not even kidding. Bootface was a thug working for Terminus. He got his name because of a boot imprint embedded into his face, which, like I said, is from Batman. Bootface first appeared in Batman and Robin Volume 2 number 10 from 2012, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting origins I've ever seen. And I mean this completely seriously. Everyone else has like a parent die, or was living in poverty, or was being abused. This dude just got kicked in the face and got so mad about it he became a supervillain. Even if he wasn't really like a good person beforehand. I mean, like, he was a thug and basically still is, but like still. Just this time, he has a ridiculous name to go with it, but hey, I still love it. And a man who is fueled by pure rage because he was permanently scarred by his attacker that ends up being a superhero, that's good enough for me. That's so funny. Bootface. And at 7, Mirror Man. Lloyd Ventures is a criminal who was detained in Gotham State Penitentiary. Using broken mirror shards, he distracts the guards long enough to escape from prison. Inspired by mirrors, I guess somehow, he becomes Mirror Man. Upon creating a machine that would enable him to see through objects, Mirror Man began targeting Batman so that he could find out his secret identity. He literally discovers Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne by using a X-ray mirror, which is freaking nuts. Like, what even is that? How is that a thing? Mirror Man actually gets sent to prison before he can reveal the identity though, but because they want conflict, of course, he manages to escape with a plan to reveal Bruce's identity to the world, only foiled when Alfred, dressed as Batman, interrupts a press conference that Bruce Wayne was hosting, instantly disproving the fact that Batman is Bruce Wayne, because you saw them both in the same room. Even though that obviously Batman is partners. I don't know why people believe that. The public should have seen through this, okay? The people in Gotham City are dumber than we thought. I mean, they had Condiment King, so I guess they are dumb.
Number 6, Kulan Gath. Kulan Gath is probably one of the most iconic villains that Conan the Barbarian has had in the comics. He is so old, in fact, that he also became the enemy of another ancient villain known as the Mutant External, more specifically, Selene. Not to be confused with the Eternals, who are their own thing entirely. These are the Externals, not the Eternals. Kulan Gath made his first full feature appearance back in 1972 in the comics in Conan the Barbarian issue number 15.
Number 5, Lar Fleas. Lar Fleas, or Agent Orange, is one unique character in the emotional spectrum, and that's because he's the sole wielder of the Orange Light of Avarice. He is the only member of the Orange Lantern Corps. Lar Fleas is driven by an insatiable greed that grants him dominion over all that he desires, driving him into conflict with whoever possesses what it is that he desires, and over the power of the Orange Lanterns, which represent greed. His power is centered on his ability to conjure constructs using the stolen identity identities and forms of those he has absorbed into his horde, making him basically an army unto himself. This ability extends even to abstract concepts and beings, showcasing the extent of his control. The big thing about Larfleeze is that since he's spent so much time with his Orange Lantern and ring, he has basically become the Orange Lantern and ring himself. This energy grants him huge levels of power. His constructs are virtually indestructible and can overwhelm even the most powerful opponents. However, Larfleeze's power comes at the cost of his individuality, as his insatiable greed makes him less of a person and more of a living embodiment of greed itself. Even without the power of the Orange Lanterns though, his race is already basically immortal, with Larfleeze himself being billions of years old, and with enough power that I seriously doubt he'll be going down anytime soon.
Number 4. Thrallsa Doom. When it comes to Conan, he definitely has a type when it comes to some of his greatest enemies. Typically, he's caught in the midst of epic battles against evil sorcerers or wizards. In Thrallsa Doom's case, his brand of evil magic user is Necromancer. While Thrallsa Doom became a famous Conan villain thanks to his appearance as the main antagonist in the 1982 Conan the Barbarian movie, he initially started out as a villain for what some consider to be a more nuanced barbarian hero also created by Robert E. Howard, Kull of Atlantis, or Kull the Conqueror, as he was also known.
Number 3. Schuma Gorath. Yes, it is a giant tentacled eyeball, but hold off on the laughter because Schuma Gorath the Destroyer, the Conqueror of Midnight, the All-Killer of the Dawn, is a ridiculously ancient being and greatest of the old gods, or the many-angled ones. Among his many powers is the ability to communicate with and control others nearby and across entire dimensions. He can create and direct powerful blasts of mystical energy and affect transmutations on a planetary scale. His skin alone is difficult to damage even with the most powerful of magics. While his form seems pretty silly, cause it is, it's actually only a shell containing his power, and he can alter this appearance however he sees fit. This is actually because it's not even his true form. His true form is apparently not even comprehensible to us humans. Boo. Schuma Gorath can destroy multiple galaxies solely through his aura pressure, and this old god has also the ability to destroy entire realities. He is the most powerful in his home dimension, just like others of his kind, and only part of his power has actually appeared on Earth. And with the stuff he has done with that fraction of power, that should tell you just how powerful he is.
Number 2. Skrulls. All of them. There's many. They're not all bad, but they started bad. That's right, Skrulls are some of the oldest villains around, although they aren't exactly considered clean-cut villains anymore. In fact, some Skrulls have even become better known as heroes in recent years. Originally though, Skrulls appeared as a villainous alien race in Fantastic Four Volume 1, Issue number 2, and who were focused solely, during their appearance, on basically conquering Earth. This was right after the FF team had been introduced in the previous issue, which was basically all Issue 1 was really about, the team's origin story. The Skrulls knew that the FF were the main protectors of Earth, at this point anyways, despite the fact that they had just sorta, started their superhero careers, which is pretty crazy. Knowing this, the Skrulls decided to pose as the FF and commit a bunch of villainous deeds while impersonating them, hoping to discredit the Fantastic Four to the point that the US military would capture and then kill the Fantastic team. With the Fantastic Four disposed of, the Earth would then be ripe for the Skrulls' taking. Of course, this plan was foiled as the FF trapped the imposters and ended up posing as them, taking the Skrulls' idea but executing it much better. Disguised as the Skrulls, the FF would tell the Skrull leader that Earth's defenses were too powerful for the invasion to succeed, causing them to just call off the invasion. The Skrulls that originally posed as the Fantastic Four members were forced to stay behind after the invasion left, taking the form of cows and living in apparent peace, as they apparently really enjoyed living as cows. Skrulls themselves can live hundreds of years, and their empire has existed for tens of millions of years, which means those cows are gonna be really, really old.
Can you imagine you're like millions of years old conquerors, and then you go to the planet, you make all your all the way there, and then someone's like, I think it's gonna be too hard, and they're just like, you're right, let's just go.
You're right.
You're right, we should just go.
And then those guys are just like, why don't we just be cows? And that's your life.
Moo. Number 1, the Great Darkness. You can't get much more ancient than existing before creation itself. The Great Darkness was the literal darkness and nothingness that existed before the Presence ever came to be. When the Presence, aka God in DC Comics, said, "Let there be light," the Great Darkness is the one who went into hiding. At some point, a clan known as the Brujeria, I believe is how you pronounce it, attempted a ritual to reawaken the Great Darkness in order to destroy God and reshape the universe. Instead of being completely evil though, this was was more like an animal who was confused and didn't understand its power or what its purpose even was in the universe. The Great Darkness, also sometimes referred to as the Great Evil Beast, went on a warpath, easily defeating many heroes and waging a solo assault on heaven itself, decimating everything in its way to demand answers from the presence. It even caused the three main figures of hell to form a union with each other just in case something went wrong. When the Great Darkness reached heaven though, it met Swamp Thing of all people, who taught it the concept of good and evil, explaining that one couldn't survive without the other. The darkness then reached up and God reached back and they became one and the same as like yin and yang or as a balance. Recently though, the Great Darkness played a large role in the Dark Crisis event. It's basically the overarching villain of the entire DC multiverse, but also just kind of force of nature doing its thing.
Coming in at number 10, we have the intelligent zombie Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy's greatest power is his resilience to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by Batman, he needs to figure out a whole new clever plan to find a way to properly defeat him. Coming in at number 9, we've got to go with Clayface. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a pretty useful skill to have. This alone would make Clayface a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that Clayface possesses when he changes into his more monstrous Hulk-like form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes. This ability to manipulate others through careful mimicry allows Clayface to be far more intelligent than he appears. And while his skill as an actor comes across as funny in depictions such as the Harley Quinn TV show, it can be quite deadly under more serious circumstances. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the bladed assassin, Deathstroke. While in recent years, Slade Wilson has become more well-known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human brain, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits, with a complete mastery of every weapon he has at his disposal. Combine that with his Icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from metahumans such as Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit and defeat. Coming in at number 7, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only a few issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power throughout Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and the fact that he's consistently been able to figure out Batman's biggest secret in multiple different universes means that Hugo Strange just might be one of Bruce Wayne's biggest threats.
Speaking of which, in its 6th, Condiment King. The Condiment King, created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for Batman the Animated Series, is a villain who makes use of various condiments, sometimes capable of causing anaphylactic shock, and his weapons are literally like those squeeze tubes for ketchup and mustard, just on guns. It's hilarious. He's generally used as comic relief within the series, but still. He would make many condiment-based puns. For example, the big bad bat guy, I knew you'd catch up to me sooner. How I relish relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight, versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. The Condiment King is seemingly killed after being betrayed and bludgeoned by the Human Flame with his own ketchup and mustard guns in the miniseries Final Crisis Aftermath run, which is a comic book, which already shows how he can actually be deadly aside from the whole, like, anaphylactic shock thing. And that's, again, not taking into account any potential allergic reactions that he can trigger. Or blindness. I mean, like, ketchup and mustard are very acidic and can cause some serious damage if left unchecked. It just goes right into the eyes, you know? Plus, what if you have fries and he gives you mustard, okay? The only appropriate punishment for that is death. Halfway through into number 5, Joker's daughter. Unfortunately, it's not the Joker's biological daughter. That would have been an interesting story. This is just a girl who finds Joker's face, stitches it onto hers, and then goes berserk. So honestly, it could very well be his biological daughter. The only person that I think would commit such an atrocious act is in fact the Joker, so who knows? While maybe not being as prolific or accomplished as the Joker, Joker's daughter is definitely insane enough for this list. Like, even if I'm pretty sure like a lot of people know she exists and like not many people underestimate her, but hey, look, even if one person underestimates her and they watch this video, boom, it's enough. It counts, okay? Not to mention the fact that she also went by Catgirl, Scarecrow, Riddler's daughter, Penguin's daughter, Cardqueed, and Harley Quinn. Each incarnation also calling herself the respected super person's daughter, which I have to say is going to make a family reunion real awkward. But in actuality, she ended up being Dwella Dent, Two-Face's daughter, apparently, which is seemingly BS in my opinion, but we love a girl with a little flair, you know? And that flair will cause her to ruin Gotham City. In at 4, Clock King. Born William Talkman, Clock King spends his early years taking care of his invalid sister. One day he finds out from a doctor that he himself only has 6 months to live. Great. Despairing for his sister's future, he watches the timing of a local bank's vault in order to rob it, hoping that the money would provide for his sister after he was gone. His caper would have gone on successfully had he not tripped the silent alarm and been caught by the Green Arrow. The Clock King then goes on to join Major Disasters in Justice League, which becomes the Justice League Antarctica. This JLA includes G-Nort, who ends up saving the lives of the entire team. The original Clock King had no metahuman powers or abilities, although he is athletic and extraordinarily smart. He extensively uses clocks and time-related gimmicks to devastating effect. His primary weapon is a sword forged into the shape of a clock's hand that also doubles as a walking stick. And his skill in swordsmanship is such that even Batman himself could not defeat him in single combat. So watch out for Clock King. Getting close to the end of number 3, the Calculator. While the Calculator now seems to be an oracle of sorts for supervillains, the original purpose and MO of the Calculator is far more entertaining and interesting, at least to me. Noah Cutler began his criminal career by crossing the country and getting into fights with various superheroes on purpose, analyzing and recording their battle tactics to ensure that he couldn't be beaten again. Or in some incarnations, he would simply get beaten and then press a button on his chest to ensure that he didn't get beat again. Maybe that was like taking in the information or something, like how Iron Man would just say like analyze his fight patterns and then come up with countermeasures, you know? But either way, okay, do you know how insanely overpowered that could have been? Just being able to like press a button and then boom, you're instantly basically immune to Batman or Robin or even Superman. Like that would be absolutely amazing. You do this enough times, you could just do whatever you want. And like then other criminals like start paying you to do their crimes for them because you guarantee success. That's freaking nuts. Okay, I wish they kept that Calculator. That could have been an even bigger threat than Darkseid if he kept going at it like that. This is why I'm the hero, because I would be unstoppable as a villain. Penultimately in at number 2, Lex Joker. Lex Joker was created when John Dee, also known as Dr. Destiny, collapsed the DC universe in half. First appearing in Superman Batman number 60 in 2009, Lex Joker is the combination of, you guessed it, Lex Luthor and Joker. Lex Joker hired Doomstroke and Terranado to destroy the Justice Titans. However, after the JTs allied with Batman and Superman, he hired 4 more mercenaries to create the Brotherhood of Injustice. Thanks to Terra, who had gone undercover with the JTs, they were able to attack the Justice Tower and come on, let's be honest. If you have the brains of Lex Luthor and the complete insanity of the Joker, you're making one heck of an opponent. When you have 2 powerful forces in comics, at some point there's like bound to be a mashup of the 2 to create a larger, even more powerful villain. And Lex Joker is probably the scariest combination we could have gotten that wasn't like Joker in Doomsday or Joker in Darkseid. Oh god, Joker Darkseid. And finally, in number 1, the Eraser. The Eraser was the chosen alias of Lenny Fiasco, who turned to crime after living his college days under constant mocking and taunting by his classmates. Of course, it's because that's what college is like. No, that's high school, bro. Fiasco is a professional at covering the tracks of other crimes. For a 20% cut, the Eraser will erase the evidence of another crime. And honestly, I think that it's like the only job that anyone with the name Fiasco could have. The villain's power is a special helmet designed to look like a pencil eraser, because of course it is, that can wipe off evidence, even those that would be invisible to the naked eye, which is pretty damn cool when you think about it. After Batman posed as a villain to try to capture the Eraser, the villain told Bruce that he had became a criminal because Bruce had shattered his dreams of going out with Celia Smith. I'm not even gonna get into that, okay? Bruce didn't even remember her name, which made the Eraser angry. And I think that this is probably the absolute coolest concept for a supervillain, because in all honesty, if this guy wasn't an idiot, he could have ruled the world. Like, just straight up, this guy would absolutely ruin any and all investigations and then turn the tides of trials. This guy could have ended up being just like a shadow government in himself, okay? If only he wasn't just a dumb.
Number 10, the Inheritors. The Inheritors are Morland's crew and family. The clan Morland himself is also a part of. They're a powerful energy vampire clan which hunt down various totems and consume them. Because yeah, there aren't just spider totems out there apparently. I want to know though, are there anteater totems, and can I be one? Please write me into a comic as an anteater totem. Someone, please. Spider totems, for those who don't know, are spider folks from across the multiverse who are basically destined to end up being connected to the spirit of the spider, either possessing powers related to the spider or some other important connection which generally gives them purpose. The Inheritors ended up getting control over the Master Weaver and used their knowledge and power to traverse the multiverse and hunt down spider totems within it. The Inheritors are generally led by Solus or Morland, and the clan has included Verna, Genix, Karn, Bora, Brix, Dara, Deimos, Malos, Mortia, Namura, and Thanos. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it feeds the algorithm and it feeds my soul. Number 9, Miriam Drew, or rather, a bunch of Miriam Drews. Miriam's Drews. Many of them. An army of them. A clone army of Miriam Drews. Who was Miriam Drew, you might be asking? Jessica Drew's mother. In the previous Spider-Woman series by Carlo Pacheco and Pere Perez, Jessica had to face off against a bunch of her mom's clones, after learning that the woman whose base she was in wasn't really her mother, but instead a clone of her. After watching her mom go from loving and considerate, seemingly having missed her daughter, to violent and aggressive, blaming Jessica for basically everything that had gone wrong in her life, Jessica then basically had to fight off an entire army of her mom's clones, ultimately. Like Jess at the time, her clone moms were also juicing, which also made them scary foes to face both in form and in power. If you don't believe me, read the series.
Number 8, Nabu. Dr. Fate is one of the most powerful magic users in DC Comics, but funnily enough, Dr. Fate is just a name used by the wearers of the Helmet of Fate, which was created by the powerful sorcerer Nabu. Nabu is actually billions of years old as one of the cosmic beings known as the Lords of Order. They came into being at the beginning of the universe and struggled with the Lords of Chaos for supremacy. The Lords of Order actually manifested themselves as the first sentient race in the universe, but it wasn't until 3500 BC, in Earth years, that one of the Lords of Order descended to Earth and became Nabu the Wise, an advisor to the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. In the New 52 continuity, he is a bit more human and credited as one of the first discoverers of magic, but regardless, after years and years and years serving pharaohs, Nabu did eventually, quote, pass on, or it's more so that his physical body could no longer contain him, and so his spirit was absorbed into magical items, mainly the Helmet of Fate, allowing him to live on through it and whoever puts the helmet on their head.
Number 7, Beast. Beast is underrated on, honestly, a lot of levels, whether we're talking about classic Beast or current Beast, but especially I feel with the current Beast that we have, that guy is downright deadly. Not only was he unable to be reined in by Wolverine, who ultimately ended up killing Beast after Beast had him become his lapdog to be sent out on some of the darkest missions of X-Force, reducing Wolverine to a mere tool used for wiping out perceived threats to Krakoa, but he also perhaps has become even more dangerous after being resurrected. Now we have multiple Beast clones who themselves are working on their own small army of Wolverine clones with the project known as Weapons of X. Number 6, Sync. Synch is only now starting to be fully appreciated by fans around the world, all thanks to his reappearance in the Krakoa era. Synch was one of the people prioritized for resurrection, as he was needed to go on a mission into the vault where the children of the vault had retreated. Considering them and their evolution a threat, the Quiet Council put together a small away team to investigate what was happening inside the vault, sending them out to basically infiltrate it. This is just what Synch, Darwin, and Laura Kinney, then known as Wolverine, currently known as Talon in the comics, were tasked to do. It's here that we got to bask in Synch's rainbow colors, saw the relationship develop between Everett himself and Laura, and where we learned that it might be possible for Synch to even sync with others who are not mutants. We'd also learn in the X-Men series that Synch had evolved to a point that he could remain synced with his fellow mutants even when outside of their range, making Synch possibly one of the most powerful mutants to just have ever existed. Number 5, Banshee. Banshee, simply put, isn't a hero we focused on here on Top 10 Nerd. I can't remember the last time I featured him on a list, and yet he kicks butt consistently in the comics. Banshee's mutant powers turn him into a siren, which oddly enough is the name for his daughter, who shares his abilities, the name that she took up for herself as an active mutant hero. Banshee can use his powers to attack his opponents, fly, see in the dark with sonar abilities, influence and persuade his opponents, and even create shields, all with the use of his amazing voice. Basically, he's like a smaller scale Black Bolt, which means that while Black Bolt, the Inhuman King, gets a ton of love in the comics and outside, other Sonic-based heroes like Banshee's Sean Cassidy tend to fall by the wayside, sadly. Number 4, Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm and likely Black Panther, who hails from the alternate reality 13729. Chimera seems to have inherited the powers of her mother, but also shares a connection to the Earth, which allows her to draw on and harness its energy. She is also a skilled tracker and can communicate telepathically with animals. I'd also assume, as she's the daughter of Storm and of T'Challa, that she is a skilled combatant as well, as while Storm is more well known for her goddess status and weather manipulation powers, she's also an extremely skilled fighter as well, and her dad would obviously be a given inspiration for her as a fighter. Black Panther is well known for his fighting prowess. Chimera may have hailed from Earth 13729, where she was a member of the X-Men, but after being displaced to Earth 616, the main comic book continuity, she also became a member of the X-Men there as well. Number 3, Angel/Archangel. Warren Worthington III is not usually folks' first pick for mutants who are their favorite among those who have belonged to the X-Men team, but it is important, I think, to acknowledge Warren's history with the mutants and consider the fact that he is a legacy member of the X-Men. Warren joined up with the very first roster of the X-Men team to have ever existed, being one of the first members to be brought together by Charles Xavier. Sure, he might have hollow bones, and his powers may mostly involve just flight, but when it comes to flying, Warren has proven in the past that he is one of the best, and in his Archangel form, he is even more powerful. He is also one of the most useful mutants outside of his power set, being an extremely accomplished businessman who tends to be one of the most charismatic members of the X-Men, who since his early days has been popular with the public, helping the team's image. Number 2, Polaris. Polaris is a character who I feel like often gets overshadowed by her dad, Magneto, and yet she too is just as much, or nearly as much I'd say, of a powerhouse as he is. Polaris has had somewhat of a rough go in recent years, especially when it comes to confronting her past and moving forward towards her future. I would love to see more moments like when she joined the X-Men, where she gets her moment in the spotlight. It's well deserved, and Lorna Dane deserves to not have her character sabotaged at every single turn, like has happened to her in some of her past. She's underrated on multiple levels, both as a hero and as a character with some real depth to her. I think it would be really amazing to see her team up with her now considered adoptive sister and brother as well to fight against injustice in the world. I love all the healing we've been doing with this whole family lately, and it would be so cool to continue along that path and see where else it could take us, especially if we bring the family together as a unit. I've seen it happen a little bit in the comics, but I'd love to see more of it. Number 1, Kid Omega. Poor Kid Omega's trope initially with his appearance in the Krakoan era X-Men comics involved him constantly being taken out, as in permanently defeated. But don't let that fool you. Quentin Quire is still a psionic badass who deserves your respect. He is considered to be one of a limited few mutants who belong to the Omega level class, meaning that he has unlimited potential in terms of what he can accomplish. And while being super powerful psionically, he's also super brilliant as well, and can actually think faster and at a higher capacity than even other extremely powerful and skilled Omega level telepaths. Quentin joined up with Logan's X-Men and has has been shown to be a potential future Phoenix in Wolverine and the X-Men issue number 42.
At number 10 is Brainiac 13. Brainiac 13 is a rendition of the original Brainiac that catapulted the character's might to unprecedented heights. Armed with advanced tech, Brainiac 13 orchestrated a jaw-dropping transformation of Metropolis, catapulting it eons ahead to the 64th century standard. But that was merely the prelude to his audacious exploits. Amidst the cataclysmic Imperex War, Brainiac 13 embarked on a daring gambit, pitting himself against the cosmic might of Imperex, a confrontation that saw him ascend to newfound power. The consequences were dire as his actions teetered on the brink of disseminating Earth and the ominous realm of apocalypse. Twist in his machinations revealed his bid to ensnare Kal-El eternally within a counterfeit Krypton. Brainiac 13's narrative arc stands as a testament to the boundless ingenuity of comic book storytelling, a captivating dance between unfettered power and the ceaseless resilience of iconic heroes. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. And by the way, many of the entries from this list are from your very own suggestions, so if you have any more, drop them down below. At number 9 is my personal favorite, Abracadabra. Imagine a world where science has brushed away the mystical curtains of stage magic, rendering it obsolete. Yet in this brave new era, Citizen Abra emerges, an enigmatic figure hailing from the 64th century. Unveiling a longing for the art of performance, Abra crafts a time machine and goes back in time to when magic held an entertaining allure. Abra's audacious escapades escalate as he crosses paths with none other than the Flash himself, Barry Allen. Armed with a mesmerizing contraption that compels applause, Abra bends audiences to his will, eliciting ovation even for the most lackluster of feats. Unfazed by the audience's indifference, he embarks on a new venture, entangling himself in pivotal historical junctures. At number 8 is Professor Zoom. Meet Eobard Thawne, the temporal troublemaker known as Professor Zoom from the world of the Flash. This sinister speedster, hailing from the 25th century, isn't your typical Roadrunner. Thawne is powered by the enigmatic negative speed force, granting him a whole arsenal of abilities. He's not just about dashing through time and dimensions, because his super speed isn't just a speed thing, because it's also a strength thing. Imagine facing a foe who combines the velocity of a bullet train with the brawn of a freight locomotive. That's basically Professor Zoom for you. But his powers go beyond the fast and furious. He's a molecular magician, letting him weave through solid objects like a ghostly apparition. And villain though he may be, in one universe iteration, he became the universe's last hope by manipulating matter itself. So while Professor Zoom might be a bane to the Flash, he's a prime example of how a speedster's potential can go far beyond the finish line. At number 7 is Fitzroy, with one of the most OP superpowers a mutant could have. Born in the same dystopian future as Bishop, Fitzroy's lineage is intertwined with the elite Hellfire Club. His mutant abilities are nothing short of intriguing. With crystalline hands, he can siphon the life force from any living being, converting their life energy for his own use. This lethal power disintegrates his victims, leaving a haunting mark. But that's not all, as Fitzroy's powers extend into the very fabric of time. By channeling the energy he absorbed from his enemies, he can forge temporal wormholes, essentially bridges across time and space. Yet, as I mentioned, these portals come at a cost. He must drain life force, with one's life traded for a passage through time. This is actually how Bishop himself was initially sent back in time to the modern era. Fitzroy's role as Bishop's main adversary adds to the rethinking layer to the chronicles of the mutant world.
And at 6, Gorilla Grod. Gorilla Grod is a Flash rogue from Africa's Gorilla City. The original Grod, which debuted in DC Comics in 1959, was a telepath who could control other animals and also had a form of mind control as well over humans. In the New 52, all inhabitants of Gorilla City had accelerated mental attributes due to the Speed Force, but Grod was still the superior member of the species. On The Flash and the CW, Grod was a very intelligent gorilla experimented on at Star Labs to try and create a super soldier for the US government. However, the torture and unethical treatment of the gorilla caused him to grow angry and evil, and he escaped seeking vengeance. Grod had powerful mind control powers on top of superhuman strength and enhanced intellect, and at one point even combined with the Flash to be a psychopathic, telepathic gorilla with super speed. So I think it's safe to say that we should all be scared of Gorilla Grod. Plus, his pop figure is pretty damn cool. Halfway through into number 5, Savatar. The fact that Barry Allen was able to just beat this whole Savatar thing from The Flash Season 3 will always escape me. I won't really ever understand how they actually ended up defeating a literal version of Barry from the future. Like, I get how they managed to do it, but it was still incredibly unrealistic, since technically Savatar would have known beforehand that the timeline was changing, since technically that should, in my brain, at least be how time travel works, but this ended up being how it works in the show, so that's fine, I guess. I don't see how it ever would have been possible to defeat a future version of the Flash without this though, but I know that he couldn't really die, since if he died, Savatar wouldn't be able to happen. A future version of the Flash is always going to be mega OP, okay? I said it. In at 4, Mirror Master. While Mirror Master never seemed like much more than a B-grade supervillain in Flash's rogues gallery, his power has made him so much more. Before he became a Flash version, the second Mirror Master, Evan McCulloch, was an assassin in Scotland and was already a formidable foe. However, once he got his mirror gun, he became insanely powerful. The mirror gun gives Mirror Master the ability to travel to an alternate dimension by entering and exiting any reflective surface. On top of being a significant pain in the Flash's side, Mirror Master has also fought Animal Man and was someone that gave him all he could handle. The CW used the Sam Scudder version, and he was only a minor villain, and then they kinda did Eva McCulloch for season 7, but honestly, even Sam being able to travel through mirrors like that, trapping the Flash in the mirror dimension for a time, this guy is certainly underestimated. Although I hope that they find a way to explore maybe some of his abilities in later comics or even the show. I'd like to see that. Getting close to the end, in number 3, the Shade. This Golden Age Flash foe is one of the most powerful and most terrifying, but he isn't always on the side of evil, luckily. First appearing in Flash Comics number 33 from 1942, this immortal conduit for dark energy was a formidable enemy for Jay Garrick and often caused problems the speedster with his weaponized shadows. Kind of like my demons, causing me all kinds of problems as well. Initially depicted as a common criminal for the Flash to stop from robbing banks and menacing Keystone City in the 40s, the Shade was eventually reimagined as something much more sinister. Originally possessing a magic cane allowing him to control darkness, the revamped 90s Shade was given a real identity of Richard Swift and an endless supply of supernatural abilities. Returning to menace the hero Starman and eventually becoming his ally, the Shade used his powers of shadow manipulation, time travel, teleportation, and intangibility for both good and evil. The Shade also had his own dimension, the Shadowlands, where unwitting enemies would become trapped. And I think that having his own dimension earns him a spot in the top 3. Just saying. Penultimately, in at number 2, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear the story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but because, you know, of course, Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So, understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods. He started killing people, which honestly seems more realistic to me, aside from just being done fighting crime totally, which can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers, understandably because again, this time Batman's a psycho. So, Batman, using the various rogues' weapons to fight Barry, knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill modified Batmobile, I don't know how the hell he did that, and then drives them both into the Speed Force. Again, I don't know how that happened or works logically, but okay. You do you, Bat Marty, we gotta get back to the future, your kids are in danger. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce, again, somehow ended up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing. And while Barry's mind was trapped inside Bruce's body, so he could just watch. He then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, who was part of the Dark Knights and whose goal was conquering the multiverse, and since he was a version of Batman who was psycho, he was like, hey you, come here, come with me, we're the same kind of. And finally, in number 1, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Nekron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Nekron's purpose. Now they aren't really fully resurrected, but that's kind of the best analogy that we have. Those with the ring have various various powers including a healing factor, aura recognition which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation which lets them extract the hearts of individuals they've slain and use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.01%, because you know that's a lot, it's worth it. And they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten and then turn them into a Black Lantern upon death. Yeah, basically zombies with superpowers, so definitely not something to laugh at, especially when it's the man who killed Barry Allen's mother for the fun of it.
Number 10, J. Jonah Jameson. While JJ might not seem like the craziest supervillain out there, he has his moments, truly. Sure, he's just a guy who most of the time causes Spider-Man more grief in his civilian identity of Peter Parker as his loudmouthed, often angry and demanding boss, but if he gets his hands on robots, whew, watch out. JJ isn't at the level of world domination underestimation, but for the most part, Spider-Man fans generally just think of JJ as a nuisance, a menace if you will, to Peter's everyday life. However, JJ has not only threatened Peter's livelihood and Spider-Man's reputation, but has also even gone toe-to-toe with Spider-Man himself, and even at one point took on She-Hulk. Typically, he's at his most dangerous whenever he gets his hands on the Spider Slayer robots or armor, which he often uses to more directly hunt Spider-Man or other heroes down himself, using muscles, or robo-muscles I guess, as opposed to just the written word. And let's not forget that the written word and media itself are also way more powerful than we maybe give them credit for, both in the comics and in real life. Number 9, Sandman. The only thing that really holds Sandman back from being so deadly is his own disinterest in crime. In the end, Sandman often resents what he has become and even grows to resent being a criminal. There are even times in the comics when Sandman has tried to turn over a new leaf and go against his story as a villain, becoming reformed, preferring to stay neutral, lawful, and of course even at times teaming up and aiding heroes. This is really what holds him back though. That, and in some cases, the vacuum cleaner. Though really that shouldn't have been able to hold Sandman at all, considering that he can control the sand that makes him up, which means that yeah, he can just kinda like move out of the vacuum cleaner, right? As sand particles. Sand is a powerful substance. It can cut you, it can get inside a wound, it's minuscule, it can get through and into almost any room or location, as it can pass through the smallest nooks and crannies. Sandman is also virtually immortal and can create duplicates of himself, allowing him to access a giant form by balling up all of these duplicates together. Now imagine if he did something like this, but on the scale of all of the sand in the world. Let's not forget that scientists have estimated that there are more grains of sand on planet Earth than stars within our universe. I know stars are bigger than grains of sand, but still, there's a lot of sand on this planet, like a lot of sand. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Spider-Man villains, let us know by clicking that like button. Number 8, Morbius. Another villain that is really only curbed, I think, because of his often more heroic nature and sense of humanity is Morbius. Okay, so Morbius might not be a global level threat like we were talking about in the intro, but he's definitely more powerful than you might think. A lot of people probably don't think about Morbius much at all, I imagine, but like the Lizard, if he's completely feral and unreserved, he's pretty dangerous. Recently in the comics, we saw that Morbius is back to being a fearsome, uncontrolled, ruled by his hunger, pseudo-science vampire when he comes up against Ben Reilly's Spider-Man during the Beyond Spider-Man event. Ben struggled to fight against Morbius, and if it wasn't for some help from Beyond, he may have even died as a result of their battle. In the end, it took the Daughters of the Dragon duo, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, together to take down Morbius, and even then, they may have only been able to do so because Morbius at that point was missing an arm. Dr. Michael Morbius can be quite strong when his power is completely unleashed, and there's nothing holding him back. Number 7, Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson isn't a villain anymore in the comics, but he did start out as one. And from his humble beginnings, you likely would not have imagined that he'd become so powerful as a character. Flash Thompson started out as Peter Parker's schoolyard bully. He didn't have any powers, he was just kind of a jerk. Over time though, Flash became less of an oaf and eventually even became a friend to Peter. He then goes on to serve in the military, becoming a decorated hero, and even becomes a superhero after he becomes Agent Venom, teaming up with the Venom symbiote, who also has a villainous origin story. Sure, Agent Anti-Venom, aka Flash Thompson, probably won't be the guy threatening the entire world, because, well, he's a hero, but he definitely now possesses enough power to instead be a hero who could potentially save the world. And considering that he was just your average run-of-the-mill high school bully, you probably wouldn't have expected him to come so far.
At number 6 is Nimrod. Now what might sound like a whimsical monitor carries a weighty resonance among X-Men enthusiasts. Despite its North American connotation of incompetence, Nimrod packs a literary punch, symbolizing a deft hunter. And let me tell you, that's precisely the association Nimrod has conjured. Enter the Nimrod of Days of Future Past, rooted in Earth 811, an incarnation of the Sentinel program. This mechanical marvel journeyed back in temporal torrents, fixated on obliterating our beloved mutants. But hold on to your cerebro, folks, because in the entangled narratives of Powers of X, a glimmer of a revelation emerges. Nimrod, our nimble hunter, holds the dystopian potential to thread the fabric of humanity and mutant kind's fate, where humans unwittingly serve as instruments in a symphony of mutant destruction, in a future where mutants teeter on the precipice of oblivion. At number 5 is Tommy Tracer. This is a lesser known villain existing in the modern era who you would have only met if you read the super weird Spider-Man The Other series. This guy, if you can call him a guy because he's eventually revealed to be a robot, has the power to hack into and control anything with a computer chip. From traffic lights to nuclear launch sites, Tracer's got access. Additionally, the self-described machine god also has neat little bullets that relentlessly track onto a locked-on target, stopping only when Spidey literally turns and catches them. For as cool as this villain is, his role in the other comic is, well, minimal to say the least. But so was about everybody else in that series. Not to hate, I'm just spitting facts. At number 4 is Kronos. David Clinton, stepping onto the pages of DC Comics with Atom issue 3, emerges as a thorn in Ray Palmer's side. A life of crime led him to a prison cell where he found himself with an abundance of time to ponder his misdeeds. Yet instead of remorse, he became captivated by timepieces. Tick by tick, he honed his knowledge of clocks, gears, and the mechanics of time itself. And when the cell doors finally swung open, he emerged as Kronos, a time-traveling villain armed with unique devices. An exploding hourglass, a wicked wristwatch, and even a contraption that could slow down time itself, all at his fingertips. His criminal exploits span the DC animated universe as he plundered history's treasures. Yet when our heroes intervened, he sought to escape through temporal vortexes, trailed by the likes of Green Lantern, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Kronos is a figure who once reflected on time, ultimately became its master, weaving a narrative where past and present collided in a whirlwind of intrigue and theft. At number 3 is Nathaniel Richards. What if the smartest man alive was evil? Now don't get too worried. While Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four may not be evil, his half-brother's future descendant definitely is. Also known as Iron Lad, Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Rama-Tut, Mr. Griffin, Dr. Doom, Kid Immortus, Saint Nathaniel, He Who Remains, and finally Kang the Conqueror, he's a descendant in the Richard Reed's family tree. He's one of the most convoluted characters in comic book history due to his numerous alternate timeline versions. And he's also possibly the greatest threat to the Marvel multiverse, with genius intellect matching that of Reed Richards. Brains are all this guy has, no superhuman powers necessary for multiversal domination. He invented time travel, enabling him to wield any tool or being across time for absolute conquest. Kang's complexity and unprecedented control over time make him a villain of unparalleled proportions, a chronicle conqueror standing on the precipice of endless possibilities. At number 2 is the Time Trapper. Trap as in to hunt, not the music genre. I feel like I have to make that decision. Legion's superhero arch-nemesis emerges a warlord at time's end. Despite loathing the Legion, this paradoxical figure ironically engineered their genesis to combat his foe, Mordu. Mordu's notorious Iron Curtain of Time prevents temporal exploration, fueling conjecture about his true identity. Brainiac number 5 speculated that Trapper was not just a person, but a sentient timeline in rebellion. What sets this entity apart is its mastery over time's current. It erects impenetrable iron curtains, halting time travelers, and even ages chosen targets, turning them into bone or ash. Even more astounding is it fragments time, forging independent pocket realms. Most astonishingly, one pocket universe retained only Earth and Krypton, expunging forces like the New Gods and the Guardians of the Universe. The Time Trapper manipulates time's tapestry with chilling finesse, weaving a web of chronal power that captivates the minds of Legion and theorists alike. At number 1 is Superior Iron Man, who is in fact a villain in this alternate timeline. timeline. A version of Tony Stark that's like the mirror universe reflection of our beloved genius inventor. This intriguing alter ego emerged after the Axis event, a storyline that flipped the moral compasses of heroes and villains. Tony, usually a poster child for heroism, found himself on the other side of the spectrum. And what a ride it was. And he didn't completely revert to his old self after the event, cleverly maintaining his wicked alignment in secret. Imagine this, Tony the charismatic villain pushing his tech agenda by releasing a subscription service app tied to the new extremist virus, allowing people to change their appearance at will, for a price of course. But fear not, cosmic enthusiasts, because Superior Iron Man was a limited phase. The hero within couldn't stay suppressed, and after a tumultuous Secret Wars event in 2015, Tony Stark was back to his virtuous self.
Number 10. Vanisher. An old school villain who also almost single-handedly defeated the X-Men back in the day. Almost. So close. Well, actually he kind of did defeat the X-Men team, but fortunately Professor X butt in to save the day. And he was only able to defeat Vanisher by wiping his mind and making him forget who he was and what he was capable of, which I think goes to show just how powerful of a villain he is. He was the first teleporter the team really encountered, proving just how crazy powerful teleporters are. Vanisher is also considered to be a super fast teleporter, and his power limits thus far have been pretty much undefined, even when he did resurface years later. I would consider him to be at a higher level though, just based on what I've seen thus far. He also was able to teleport himself safely just instinctually, even when teleporting to a place he's never seen or been to before, avoiding teleporting partially or fully into any solid objects, which of course could kill him, and which is like a great danger if you're a teleporter. You just teleport somewhere and now part of you's in a car and you're like, well, I guess I'm dead now. That's it. Number 9. Living Diamond. Okay, so someone I also think we need to talk about who needs some kind of redemption in the comics is Jack Winters, aka Jack O' Diamonds, or Living Diamond. He was one of the first X-Men villains whom Professor X saved Scott Summers from, thereby recruiting him to his X-Men team. Living Diamond's mutant power was believed to be radiation resistance, but he was also shown to be able to teleport short distances, had telepathy, and had a diamond form. Does that sound familiar at all? Telepathy with a diamond form. Somehow Living Diamond was way too easily defeated by a vibration beam which shattered him. I know Living Diamond is dead now and was undead at one point, but I really feel like considering how OP Emma Frost has become, Living Diamond should also get a second chance to prove just how powerful he in theory should be. I mean, if you got all that, how were you so easily defeated? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about the unexpected yet powerful villains that we don't usually get to talk about, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Arcade. Arcade is one of those villains who feels super ridiculous with his grandiose plans for Murder World, but in reality when he actually manages to achieve plots like Murder World, he's actually quite scary. I mean, getting a sneak peek into just what a ludicrous and horrifying operation he'd run in Hellions really made me appreciate just how dangerous Arcade can be if he does manage to get enough hostages, that is, to control people into working with him so he can create his Murder World. In Hellions number 9, it's revealed that the trap Mastermind walked the Hellions, and prior to that Mr. Sinister, into was a trap laid by Arcade himself. Gasp, what a reveal. Arcade's plan was to use Sinister's Hellions as leverage to encourage Sinister to work for him. Sinister didn't really seem to actually care about the Hellions, and he basically just agreed outright, although Arcade still chose to forcefully remove some of his teeth for fun before putting him to work. He wanted Sinister to make clones for him for Murder World, and had his plan worked, it would have been a real horror show. However, Sinister made a counteroffer to Mastermind, and instead the two double-crossed Arcade. Still, that whole 3-issue arc made me believe in the power of Arcade. Like, if he has the right allies, he could be really crazy. I'm here for some sort of plot where Arcade tries to just turn the world into Murder World or something. If that hasn't happened yet, someone write that for me, please. Maybe I should write that down. Maybe I should write that. I don't know. Marvel, call me. I got ideas apparently. Number 7. The Blob. The Blob is a villain that we don't often get to talk about on these supervillain lists. He tends to fall by the wayside, but truly he's pretty unstoppable. And when he puts his mind to something, or when he puts his body to something, he's a terribly tough villain to defeat feet or even move. The Blob was one of the first villains to appear in the original X-Men series, and when he did, he gave the team of youngsters a really tough time. He also attacked them with a circus. The Blob actually didn't start out as a villain, but became one due to the influence of Professor X and the X-Men themselves. Also, just thinking back and like the amount of times that the X-Men have fought circuses or been trapped in circuses, or that happens a lot. That's like a recurring theme. Initially, the X-Men attempted to recruit the Blob, but after the Blob refused to accept their offer, he managed to escape before Xavier could wipe his mind of their identities. This caused problems later on down the road, but really it was how the X-Men treated him after he refused to join, and kind of his own self-esteem, and then later his overcompensating sense of superiority that turned him into a villain. I wonder if the Blob actually could have been an ally if this whole scenario had just gone a little bit differently. The Blob is super strong, durable, and virtually immovable thanks to his ability to manipulate gravitational mass, which is pretty powerful. He also later gained a secondary mutation which gave him a liquid form, but he hasn't really exhibited a ton of control with his secondary power set. But he also has liquid form. That's on the resume of powers now. Number 6. Sauron. I've always felt bad for Sauron. Like, this dude does not get enough love when it comes to our boosting of supervillains here on the channel. I know Sauron seems kinda silly on paper, but he's also pretty diabolical and deadly when he wants to be. And if the person writing the character also believes in his prowess. Sauron can temporarily absorb mutant powers, is super strong, and somehow has functional pterodactyl hands that he can use to pick up weapons and items. I don't even know how he does that. That's nuts to me. Sauron is also an energy vampire, which means his powers are literally deadly. He needs life force energy to live, and when he absorbs life force energy, it can actually result in the death of his victim. Honestly, I think if he just had the right team up, he could be pretty unstoppable. Maybe with X-Men Green, he'll be able to do something crazy. I really want X-Men Green to be like a super villain team. Like kinda like Poison Ivy. Like, we're villains, but we're like saving the planet. Number 5. Sin Eater. Sin Eater saw a massive power upgrade recently. Initially, he was just a crazed man obsessed with absolving the sins of others through killing them. But more recently, in Nick Spencer's run on Spider-Man in 2020, he became so much more than that. In issue number 46, we see Sin Eater with newfound powers to actually absorb and absolve the sin of villains, and with those sins, he would also gain their powers. This meant that the sky was almost the limit for just how powerful of a villain Sin Eater could become. However, after learning that he was being manipulated by Kindred and kinda used as a pawn, Sin Eater became distraught and ended up taking his own life. He would later be resurrected as a corpse, but we don't really know what happened to said corpse after he was brought back and the fight against Kindred sort of came to a close. He could still be out there somewhere though, and who knows, he could have some of his former hyped up powers. I doubt it, but even if he doesn't, he did have it at one point, so I think it's still, we should count it. It was pretty cool. Number 4. Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is, someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. I mean, look at what Mystique managed to do recently in X-Men's Inferno series, or look at what Chameleon might seemingly be up to currently in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as them, but he also is pretty good at just hatching plans as well. Number 3. Kingpin. When it comes to Kingpin, we usually think of him as a threat confined to New York City. In fact, some people don't even think of Kingpin at all when it comes to Spider-Man. Over the years, Kingpin has become more synonymous with the superhero Daredevil, even though Kingpin's first appearance was actually in a Spider-Man comic, making his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50 during the original 1963 series. Lately in the comics, Kingpin has been setting his sights on a much more grand prize than just causing grief for New York, its citizens, and its heroes. He is taking on all of the superheroes based in the US that oppose him as he aims to run for president, using Kilgrave, yes, the Purple Man's powers, to encourage everyone to vote for him. Or else. Superheroes who do not ally themselves with Kingpin in this endeavor will face his wrath during Marvel's Devil's Reign event. Number 2. Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors, and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be not so real of a threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world, or well, even being defeated, he kind of still did that. His plan here was to convince everyone that he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, he actually still managed to kind of succeed. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating pretty much all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting Wolverine to kill the entire X-Men team and the school. Yikes. In other words, just because you think something isn't real doesn't mean that you shouldn't still fear it and that it can't still hurt you. A great illusion can be more powerful than actual action in some cases. Number 1. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is a villain that might be well respected among Spider-Man fans, but on a greater scale, he's not likely someone you think of when you think of a global level supervillain threat. But while he might not share the status of comic book villains like Dr. Doom, it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to instill that level of fear among the superhero community. Dr. Octopus might seem a bit silly with his haircut and his mechanical arms and his sometimes snazzy white suit and sunglasses, but let's not forget that he's actually a diabolical super genius whose brilliance combined with the sheer strength of his claws makes him a dangerous person to cross. Number 10. Namor. While many folks think of Namor as being an anti-hero, and honestly he most definitely is, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe he's only really been presented to us as like a straight up villain. Albeit a straight up villain with a pretty powerful and universally relatable motive, I would say. He does what he does in an effort to protect his people and to defend the oceans from those who would pollute and destroy them. AKA, that's us. I think we can all get behind that message. I know I can, as someone that, doesn't want our oceans to bubble and boil and just be filled with garbage. However, Namor's methods honestly could use some work from a heroic standpoint. Namor is presented as being both brutal and cruel when it comes to his actions, which makes him a villain in the MCU. While he is around 100 years old in the comics at this point, his live action adaptation was made considerably older and is estimated based on his origin to actually be around 500 years old. Woo!
Number 9. Black Adam. Another anti-hero? I promise this won't be a common occurrence. There are two main different origin stories for Black Adam. In the pre-New 52 era of DC, circa 1200 BC, the wizard Shazam became a high priest to the pharaoh Ramses II of Egypt. This is where he met the young prince Teth Adam of Kahndaq. Ramses' son. There we go. Teth Adam impressed the wizard with his fairness and decency, and boom, he was granted the power. But in the more recent continuity, Teth Adam was born in Egypt in the 26th century BCE along the banks of the Nile as part of the Kandaki tribe, and it did not take long for him to be forced into a life of unwilling servitude. Very different. His entire family lost their lives except for his nephew Aman. Aman would save Teth Adam's life, which got him the recognition of the wizard Shazam, who turned Aman into his champion. Aman then shared this power with his uncle Teth Adam, but not seeing eye to eye on how to use the power, Black Adam took his own nephew off of the board and stole the power for himself. This was before he was either banished, stuck in a scarab, or locked away in a tomb, depending on which era you want to talk about. But no matter when we are talking about, Black Adam has been a threat to everyone, and he took on almost the entire world when his family was taken from him back in DC's World War III.
Number 8. Jeff the Landshark. Jeff the Landshark is obviously one of my favorite supporting characters on this list, although really I'm kind of a sucker for great supporting characters, of which there are honestly many good ones to pick from between the big two publishers of Marvel and DC. Jeff the Landshark has been a supporting character and ally to many different superheroes. He's palled around with Elsa Bloodstone, which kind of makes some of the most sense considering her connections to monstrous creatures, Gwenpool, Deadpool, and Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, and many others in addition to Kate in his own Marvel Infinity series. It's Jeff! Jeff is basically exactly what his full name claims he is, a great white shark with feet who can walk around on land. While he might be smaller than what you imagine when you think great white shark, that is, he's not 25 feet long or anything like that, he's still mighty, and I know I would not want to get into a knife fight with Jeff.
Coming in at number 7, we have Doctor Strange. Now, obviously Doctor Strange is already known to be pretty powerful. After all, he's Earth's primary defender against mystical threats in the Marvel Universe, and always seems to have some sort of spell to solve whatever problem is currently facing Earth's mightiest heroes. As a master of the mystic arts, Strange has also entirely stopped aging, and is effectively immortal, being unable to die from any medical disease or symptoms of old age. And when Strange recently did die in the Marvel comic called, fittingly enough, The Death of Doctor Strange, he had already concocted a way for a younger version of himself from the timeline to take his place and defend Earth against any extra-dimensional forces that might seek to take advantage of his own death. There's planning ahead, and then there's Dr. Stephen Strange, taking it to a whole nother level. Coming in at number 6, we have Patrick O'Brien, aka Plastic Man. Typically seen as one of the comic relief members of the Justice League, Plastic Man is a hero whose powers just seem wacky on the surface, but when you really think about them, technically make him one of the most powerful members on the Justice League team. Capable of completely manipulating his body down to the molecular level, Plastic Man is essentially indestructible given how flexible he's able to become. Completely impervious to physical damage, Plastic Man has also shown a complete immunity to mind control or telepathic suggestions, as his brain isn't made of enough solid matter for anyone else to control. All of these facts combine to make Plastic Man much more dangerous than a simple joke of a hero. Coming in at number 5, we have Ghost Rider. As a flaming skull-headed hero with demonic superpowers, Ghost Rider is one of the more noteworthy mystical heroes in the Marvel Universe, using Hell's own powers to fight against evil and protect his world from whatever threatens it. But Ghost Rider's most underrated ability might just be his penance stare, which causes whoever it's being used upon to relive all of the pain and trauma they've caused throughout their life and filling them with remorse. Some villains are merely stunned by the penance stare, while some have been so remorseful they've burst into flames, with even the godlike Galactus being halted by the penance stare and forced to experience the trillions of deaths that he'd caused over the years. And if you can stop Galactus, hell, you can pretty much stop anything. Coming in at number 4, we have Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. As one of the earliest members of the X-Men, Bobby has had a lot of time over the years to explore his powers, and contrary to appearances, he can do far more than just convert his body into ice. Classified as an Omega-level mutant, the most powerful designation there is, Iceman is capable of not only controlling the temperature of all of his own molecules, but is able to manipulate water molecules entirely as well as part of his own mass. This means the possibilities for Bobby's powers are as intense and malleable as water itself, allowing him to freeze the blood within enemies' veins, travel instantly through a stream of water, or even cause another ice age if Bobby didn't hold back his full strength. Coming in at number 3, we have Mark Spector, aka the infamous Moon Knight. A street-level Marvel hero with powers that go far beyond the usual street, Mark Spector is a vessel for the Egyptian god known as Khonshu. Able to embrace the 4 different aspects of Khonshu as 4 distinct personalities within his head, Moon Knight is strongest under the light of a full moon, giving him physical strength far beyond that of a normal man, and a pain tolerance that is nearly limitless. On top of his supernatural abilities, Mark is also an expert in both weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, combining them with his moon-based powers into a deadly combination that even left him capable of taking on the entire Avengers team. Coming in at number 2, we have Susan Storm, aka the Invisible Woman. On a team with someone made of fire, someone made of rocks, and the smartest man in the universe, you wouldn't immediately think that the Invisible Woman is the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, but looks can certainly be deceiving. Granted with the power of invisibility and the power to generate invisible force fields following her exposure to cosmic radiation, Sue Storm's force fields are the key to her tremendous strength, capable of turning others invisible invisible, giving herself support to fly through the air, and capable of blocking even psychic attacks against her or the rest of the team, the Invisible Woman can manipulate her force fields into any shape that's needed, including being capable of creating expanding fields inside of any enemy she chooses. Let's just hope that that usage of her ability stays just with her villainous alter egos, shall we? And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the one and only Spectacular Spider-Man. Spider-Man would never be called a weakling by anyone, except maybe some supervillains, but his actual physical strength is actually far beyond what anyone in even the Marvel universe would expect. Under situations of intense stress, Peter Parker has been shown as capable of lifting literal tons, far beyond the usual strength he generally seems to show. And when Peter Parker's body was briefly taken over by Otto Octavius's brain, the villain was stunned to discover that Spider-Man had been holding back every punch he'd ever thrown, after accidentally knocking the Scorpion's jaw clean off.
Number 10. Mantis. Mantis actually got her start in comics when she used her abilities to reform Swordsman or Jacques Duquesne, which actually got her into the Avengers. Mantis's powers and abilities are more than what you may have gathered from her film counterpart. Mantis has complete control over her entire body, which in turn gives her peak human agility, the ability to accelerate healing through force of will, and an empathic nature enabling her to communicate telepathically with and sense the emotions of others as psychic vibrations. She can also control her heart and respiratory rate and blood flow as well. Her mastery of the Kotati priest's martial arts, which focuses on the manipulation of nerve endings and pressure points, has enabled her to knock out beings as powerful as Thor, and her telepathic and empathic abilities are improved upon thanks to the two little antennae that she has coming out of her head. But it doesn't stop there though. Mantis also gained abilities when she merged with the Kotati, such as being able to communicate with both plants and animals, and survive in space in a physically solid energy form. She can transfer herself from plant life to plant life across interstellar distances or even dimensions, creating a new body from the plant life wherever she ends up. She can transmit and receive telepathic impressions, she has precognitive powers, and more recently, she can fire powerful pyrokinetic energy blasts from energy fields, communicate directly with cosmic beings such as eternity and death, and completely control her personal energies as well as her physical form. I don't want to keep talking about it anymore. Number 9. Hawkeye. Clint Barton is essentially just a regular human man, but despite that, and likely because of his abilities and talents, he is considered a power level 4 according to Nick Fury's intel, whatever that means. Those aforementioned abilities include being a master of archery in the use of regular bows, longbows, compound bows, and crossbows, with basically perfect accuracy, able to fire multiple arrows at a single target in just a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in a few quick strokes, and directly hitting small targets at the greatest of distances. But he now also has near perfect precision with any aimed or thrown weapon. He is at the peak level of human eyesight possible, is in peak athletic human condition with peak strength, endurance, and reflexes. He's an expert acrobat, tactician, and master martial artist, but just listing off his abilities isn't going to give you a proper understanding of how cool Hawkeye is. So what has he done? In Avengers Volume 3 number 14, Hawkeye was cornered by 17 marksmen and took them all down without taking a single life. And in Hawkeye Volume 4 number 1, Clint ran into a wanted criminal in a bar and took him down silently, somehow fracturing his neck with a deck of cards. I don't know. Number 8. Tigra. When Greer Nelson first came on the scene, she was just known as the Cat, and was given powers tied to her costume. But that all changed when she became Tigra, or Tigra, however you want to pronounce it. Mutating into a human-tiger hybrid in a ritual that bound her to the, quote, cat people, which while it may be a silly name, was a race of humanoid cats who were created in the Middle Ages, so cat people. Now before you laugh at her for looking silly, just know that in her tiger form, Tigra is granted some useful abilities. Her superhuman strength allows her to lift over 10 tons with her leg muscles, allowing her to perform a standing jump of 12 feet. She can run at speeds of around 70 miles per hour, has superhuman durability, agility, reflexes, and stamina, and as we all know, cats have heightened senses and like to knock things off of wherever you carefully place them. And as far as I know, the former is still the same with Tigra, whose senses are about 10 times that of a human's. Tigra's eyesight can sense the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing her for night vision. She can more easily detect the movements of an opponent. Her hearing is so strong that she can detect a ball of tissue paper her being dropped at a distance of 40 feet, just like every other cat, and her sense of smell is so developed she can selectively sort through odors just to track someone.
Number 7. Lois Lane. Lois Lane is unstoppable. She is one of the bravest characters in comics I've ever seen, and that's pretty impressive considering she doesn't really have any powers to speak of. Lois Lane is an investigative reporter, which has also led her to uncover some secrets that are of value to superhero friends, but also makes her a hero of the people, helping to keep them informed. Journalism is kind of like a tool or a weapon, honestly, that can be wielded to basically save the world by prioritizing what stories dominate the media and exposing dark truths to the public so that they can actually be addressed. We need more Lois Lanes out there, not just in the comics, but in the real world. Number 6. Alfred. I mean, obviously Alfred has to make this list, right? He is possibly one of the strongest supporting characters I have ever read, not even just within comics. Of course, he is gone now, but even while he is gone, he has an insanely strong presence still. Just take a look at Nightwing. Over there, Alfred is the guiding light in Dick Grayson's life, who was left a sizable fortune by Bruce's butler and father figure. I'm not sure what happened to Alfred's daughter. I'm pretty sure he has a daughter when it comes to that inheritance, but we're just going to assume that that all got figured out prior to his death. Or maybe she's dead now? I don't know. Anyways, apparently it's all good. Even while he's not in the picture, Alfred still lives on in the strength of the men that he helped to raise. So cute! Number 5. Mary Jane Watson. While in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, MJ was more used in a damsel in distress capacity, with Spider-Man constantly having to rush in to save her at the last second. In the comics, MJ has actually had some pretty impressive and powerful moments. She might not always be the strongest one around, but Mary Jane is actually more capable in a fight than you would expect, having been trained in hand-to-hand combat on multiple occasions, at one point being trained by Captain America himself. MJ has also donned the Iron Spider armor, rushing into a fight even when Spider-Man pleaded for her to run away from said fight. One thing that MJ always seems to have, regardless of her skill level and capability when it comes to who is writing her, is that she is very brave, probably one of the bravest characters around, even helping Peter as well in his final fight against the Green Goblin in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Also, when it comes to those on our list, she's currently really one of the most powerful characters here, as she actually has randomized superpowers tied to a bracelet which manifest differently every time, similar to her playing the slots. Sometimes they are more useful, sometimes less. So, I mean, there's also that. Number 4. Bitewing. Bitewing! Oh my goodness. While Dick Grayson's pupper might be a new addition to the superhero family, I still love her, and she still has proven herself, I think, already. And I consider her to be a pretty powerful supporting character. I mean, she was literally given superpowers by Nightmite. She could talk and everything. And although this was temporary, I still think she would do anything to fiercely protect her owner and her pal, Nightwing, and his partner in crime fighting and his partner in love, Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl. Also, if you're wondering if a dog counts as a supporting character, well, she does to me. So yeah, I'm gonna count her. Number 3. Ferdinand. While initially I was thinking of putting Etta Candy or even Steve Trevor on this list, although I'm not a huge Steve Trevor fan myself, I think one of the major MVPs in Wonder Woman's life when it comes to allies and supporting characters is actually Ferdinand. Well, unlike many of the other people on this list, Ferdinand actually has some power as a Minotaur, possessing super strength. But he isn't really known for being a fighter, but instead a master chef. His cooking skills are so great that he can reproduce any dish to have ever existed, which is pretty impressive. But even more impressive, he is a great and loyal friend to Diana, and when she had her world turned upside down, Etta and Steve knew that one of the only people who could help Diana was actually Ferdinand. Upon reuniting with Diana, he helped her to fully remember who she was and sort through what was real and what was fiction in her mind, allowing her to overcome her emotional and mental struggles at the time and become Wonder Woman once more. Number 2. Lindsay McCabe. When Lindsay was first introduced in the comics, she was just Spider-Woman's roommate and a working actress. She also was one of Spider-Woman's first friends who happened to be a woman, which at one time was actually a pretty rare occurrence for Jessica Drew. Although now I would say she has many gal pals, which is pretty great. Lindsay wasn't even really known for being the most star-studded actress initially in the comics. Instead, her career was kind of presented as being, in some ways, a bit more realistic, I would say. While characters like Mary Jane tend to get the leading lady roles pretty much almost all the time, Lindsay was more of a working actress, scoring smaller roles as a supporting actor and even at times seemingly an elevated background performer, I'd say. With her reintroduction in the comics in the latest Spider-Woman comic, we knew her as a professional stunt woman, which actually also makes a lot of sense considering that it was established way earlier on in her history that she had actually done her own stunts on set before. That was way back in the 80s Wolverine series. Needless to say, her experience as a stunt woman as well as her skills as an actor have actually come in super handy in the past, making her more of an asset actually than a liability in a fight, which might not be what you expect, but yeah, Lindsay's got some moves. Number 1. Rick Jones. Rick Jones is Hulk's best friend. Rick might be a character who has somewhat fallen by the wayside recently, but he is still a supporting character who should be fondly remembered and celebrated. Not only has he been there for the Hulk through thick and thin, even attempting to talk him down during World War Hulk, but he also has ties to Marvel's Captain Marvel. After receiving one of his nega bans, although sadly, you likely won't see him featured in the upcoming Disney and Marvel film, The Marvels. Although if that does happen, that would be pretty great, I think. Aside from his brief time sharing and temporarily possessing the powers of Captain Marvel though, Rick Jones has also actually been a Hulk himself, after he ended up falling into a vat full of chemicals intended to be used to cure Bruce Banner. However, this had the opposite effect for Rick, turning him into a Hulk temporarily, although he would of course be cured himself. To me, Rick Jones is kind of like the Jimmy Olsen of Marvel Comics, having had many surprising and exciting adventures where he himself has received powers for a time and multiple times.
At number 10 we have Ancient Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider on a freaking mammoth? Are you kidding me? Back when Earth was an untamed land inhabited by tribes of cavemen, the young boy who would become the first Ghost Rider was brilliant among his pack, but he kept this to himself, fearing isolation. One day a strange man confronts the tribe, swiftly becoming the leader of their pack through violent means, and eventually revealing himself to be a Wendigo before devouring the entire tribe, save for the young boy. Before the Wendigo leaves, he names the boy Ghost and challenges the boy to find him. With everyone he'd ever known gone, Ghost ventures beyond his cave, deciding that if the stranger could survive out there in the world, so could he. Ghost then embarks on a quest to survive and find his newfound adversary. Alone in a new turbulent environment, Ghost nearly succumbs to exhaustion, but at that moment he's approached by a talking serpent who bestows upon Ghost the spirit of vengeance as a means of achieving his goal, transforming him into the very first Ghost Rider. Fast forward 5 years and the stage is set for a showdown. Ghost on the back of a flaming mammoth confronts the Wendigo, engaging in a battle that ends with the Wendigo pushing Ghost atop the mammoth off a cliff, a fall that only the rider would survive. Alone once more, the Ghost was approached by Odin and Lady Phoenix, who would ask him to join the prehistoric Avengers. By the way, if Ghost Rider on a mammoth isn't cool enough for you, then try the Ghost Rider of the Hyborian Age about 990,000 years later, when the Ghost Rider of that era rode a giant spider. The Spider Rider would go on to confront Conan the Barbarian, and while we don't know how that showdown ends, you can definitely bet it would be a battle of the ages. Well, the Hyborian Age specifically. And speaking of which,
Number 9. Conan the Barbarian. Conan was born on a carnage-strewn battlefield in the hills of the westernmost region of Chimera, all the way back in the Hyborian Age, aka around 13 to 10,000 BC. The fact that Conan was born on a battlefield was considered to be an omen that Conan would grow up to be a great warrior one day. And Conan was one of the most accomplished swordsmen of the Hyborian Age. He has unusually high strength, agility, and speed for a human. He has lifted immense objects or enemies, even using his bare hands to bring down a raging bull when he was still relatively young. It's said that he has the strength equivalent of 10 to 20 men. More often than not though, Conan relies upon his lightning fast reflexes in combat situations, and they've very rarely failed him. On top of that, he has a massive level of durability, and through years of dealing with sorcerers, magicians, and witches, he has even developed a moderate level of resistance to magic and mind control spells. Conan is a master warrior. He has a hardy survival instinct, is a master of stealth, and is multilingual. While primarily known as a wandering sellsword, Conan progressively became a master tactician, leading entire armies into battle, and eventually Conan even became king of Aquilonia, wherever that is, and also eventually a hero interacting with the heroes of the modern day.
if you're enjoying the videos so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Moving on to number 8, we have Odin Borson. Wait, did any of you guys know that the Allfather's last name is Borson? Just me? Okay. Odin, born from the union of Bor, the son of Buri, and Besla, a giantess, emerged alongside his brothers Kul, Vilai, and Vis. I definitely butchered that, I'm so sorry. Together, these divine siblings embarked on a cosmic odyssey that would would reshape reality itself. They dared to challenge Ymir the Frost Giant, forging the very fabric of the cosmos and existence itself from Ymir's remains. Asgard, the celestial realm, blossomed from the remnants of Ymir, becoming the abode of gods in the heart of their dominion. Yet Odin's exploits were not limited to creation alone. One day, a sentient and all-powerful storm known as the God Tempest threatened the sanctity of Asgard. Odin, as mighty as the storm was, stood resolute against its fury, and with a display of power that echoed through the cosmos, Odin quelled the Tempest, imprisoning its essence within a fragment of Uru, which would one day become the legendary Mjolnir, a symbol of power and worthiness. Sometime after forging Mjolnir, but long before the birth of Thor, Odin descended upon Midgard, then known as Aesheim, where he bestowed upon the world the gift of humanity. However, even the god's benevolence can be tempered with enigmatic purpose. Bor, his father, was not entirely pleased with Odin's creation, casting upon humanity the mantle of suffering. As eons swept by, Odin's saga intertwined with the Stone Age. See, Mjolnir proved difficult to wield, leading Odin to forge an alliance with mystically empowered prehistoric humans. Together they united as the Stone Age Avengers, the guardians of Earth's fragile yet flourishing existence.
Number 7. The Wizard. Mamaragan, or the Wizard, or just Shazam's origin story is deeply rooted in ancient mysticism and magic. He was an ancient wizard who once belonged to an order known as the Council of Eternity, sworn to safeguard the realms from supernatural threats. Thousands of years ago, during the days of ancient Egypt, Mamaragan was granted incredible magical powers tied to the 6 gods of Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. As the wielder of the magic word Shazam, Mamaragan could channel the combined abilities of the 6 figures, bestowing those powers upon a worthy champion. However, when his first champion, Teth Adam, aka Black Adam, fell to darkness, Mamaragan sealed the powers away for centuries. In the modern era, Mamaragan's essence endured, choosing the young Billy Batson as his new champion. When Billy utters the word Shazam, he transforms into the superhero Shazam, embodying the collective powers that Mamaragan once held. Mamaragan's origin story is a tapestry of ancient magic, responsibility, and the passing of the torch to a new generation of heroes who carry his legacy in the form of Shazam. He was a hero, but has kind of become something much more important. Number 6. Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus, Skyfather and supreme ruler of the gods of Olympus, and Alcmena, a mortal woman who lived over 3,000 years ago. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arranged for her father Zeus to have a half-mortal son to be the world's champion. Zeus seduced the mortal queen Alcmena, pretending to be her husband, King Amphitryon, I think is how you pronounce that, and Alcmena gave birth to the baby Hercules. Now, as an adult demigod in ancient Greece, Hercules achieved worldwide fame as he became the greatest hero of the ancient world, best known for his 12 labors. As the Olympian god of strength as well, Hercules' strength is unlimited, making him one of the strongest and most powerful heroes in the Marvel universe. As an infant, he was breastfed by his stepmother, Hera, queen of the Olympian gods, which increased his already demigod physiology to a godlike level. Hercules possesses the superhuman physical attributes of an Olympian god, but interestingly, some of his powers are superior to the vast majority of his own race. Most recently though, he is a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but he has also been a part of the Avengers, the God Squad, the Council of Godheads, the Mighty Avengers, the Secret Avengers, the Defenders, the Heroes for Hire, and of course, S.H.I.E.L.D. Number 5. Anthro. Created by Howard Post, Anthro is considered the first boy on Earth, existing in prehistoric times. He lived with his family during a period when the world was still in its primal stages. Anthro's curiosity and adaptability drove him to explore the challenges and mysteries of a world populated by both primitive creatures and nascent human tribes. Through his adventures, Anthro unwittingly played a significant role in shaping humanity's development and survival, often making use of his ingenuity and courage to overcome obstacles, while also being a part of some modern-age stories thanks to time travel. He's popped up in Crisis on Infinite Earths, Armageddon 2001, Zero Hour, Team 13, and Final Crisis, and he's even been to the Marvel Universe where he interacted with Devil Dinosaur. Anthro's narrative explores the struggle for survival, the emergence of intelligence, and the foundation of human civilization. His story reflects the essence of human curiosity, resilience, and the quest for progress, serving as a symbol of humanity's earliest steps into the unknown. His powers are, well, pretty much non-existent, but he has played a part in some big events and in more than just a background kind of way. Number 4, the Ancient One. Born over 1,000 years ago, the Ancient One, otherwise known as Yao, was a local to the Tibetan ancient city of Kamar-Taj. Under the guidance of the mystic sorcerer Kalu, Yao delved into the ancient arts of magic and arcane wisdom, eventually surpassing and even facing his mentor. After facing his mentor, granting himself long life, and fighting alongside sorcerer supremes throughout time, he sought out an order of ancient magic users known as the Ancient Ones in order to devote his entire life to their goal of combating evil sorcerers. The youth eventually became even more skilled than his colleagues though, and grew in power so great that he was the first mortal ever of Earth to meet with Eternity, the sentient embodiment of the universe, who presented him with the Amulet of Agamotto and charged him to become the Earth's Dimension's Sorcerer Supreme. After spending a ton of time trying to sculpt a successor and having multiple possible choices, Yao eventually passed on and left the Sorcerer Supreme mantle to Dr. Stephen Strange. Number 3, I, Vampire. Vampires in DC Comics are practically indestructible and can regenerate any damage done by consuming blood. They have superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, can transform into bats, wolves, rats, and mist, and have enhanced senses and a bit of psychokinesis. But despite that, they do have some major weaknesses that pretty much everyone is aware of, with a big one being the frickin' sun, unless they can find a way to temporarily make themselves immune. But for I, Vampire, otherwise known as Andrew Bennett, the former 16th century English nobleman in Queen Elizabeth's court, he has a peculiar ability to eventually automatically revive himself after he is sent to the grave, even if he becomes a pile of ashes from the sun. He has even survived the end of the universe. I don't know how that's possible. The ability is a bit of a mystery even to Bennett himself. When he survived the end of the universe, it was at the will of the Presence, leaving some to believe that this may be true in all cases, but that's not actually confirmed. Whatever the reason, it has allowed him to survive as a heroic vegetarian vampire all the way until the modern day. Number 2, Dream. The Endless, featured in DC's Sandman story, is a group of 7 siblings: death, destiny, despair, desire, delirium, destruction, and the focus of our point today, Dream. These siblings represent fundamental aspects and forces of the Vertigo/DC universe, and they are all immortal, ageless, and nigh omnipotent. The parents of the Endless were revealed to be the embodiment of Time, father of the Endless, and Night, the embodiment of the infinite darkness that existed before the dawn of the universe, and the mother of the Endless. So, it's safe to say that these beings are probably pretty ancient. Like 10 billion years ancient. They came from the beginning of the universe. As for Dream, or Morpheus, he isn't so much a superhero as we are used to, but he is an extremely powerful, reluctant hero, and his journey to that status from emotionless god to a being displaying very human-like emotions and characteristics is the fundamental story of the Sandman. Dream dwells in a realm called the Dreaming, from where he controlled the fundamental concept of fantasy and reality in the universe, as the line between the waking world and the dreams is quite thin. And in at number 1 today, it's Hippolyta. This queen's history begins thousands of years ago, around 1300 BC. The Greek pantheon held a meeting convened by the goddesses. They were discussing the creation of a race of humans that would champion their ideals. The male gods, including Zeus and Ares, did not seem interested in this, and Hera did not wish to go against her husband. So it was left to the other primary female Greek goddesses. They decided to travel into the underworld, where they came upon the Well of Souls, where the souls of all the women murdered by men's hatred were gathered together. The goddesses took these souls and went and dropped them into a lake in Greece. The souls mixed with the clay and the stone of the lake bed to form the Amazons, and the first one to emerge from the waters was Hippolyta. The goddesses appointed Hippolyta, or Hippolyta, however you want to pronounce it, to be queen, and they decreed that the Amazons were to spread the message of peace, tolerance, and equality by being super dope warriors. Yes, Wonder Woman is also pretty ancient too, but Mama came first, so here we are. Sorry.
At number 10 is Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond. In a future where the iconic Batman Bruce Wayne has hung up his cape. But fear not, because the Project Cadmus director Amanda Waller had foreseen this eventual outcome. She believed that another Batman would be necessary, and thus Project Batman Beyond was born. The plan was as audacious as it was ingenious, combining Batman's DNA from his battles with cutting-edge nanotechnology. With the genetic blueprint secured, the only missing piece was a suitable family to raise a successor. Enter the McGinnis McGinnis household where Warren and Mary turned out to be the perfect genetic match, akin to Martha and Thomas Wayne. After a seemingly routine flu shot, they became the proud parents of Terry McGinnis, essentially Bruce Wayne reborn. Amanda even contemplated sending an assassin to ensure history played out, but that idea mercifully fell by the wayside. As Terry grew through his high school years, he found himself tangling in a street gang known as the Jokers, with a Z. A chance encounter with an older, weathered Bruce Wayne on the grounds of Wayne Manor led him to a faithful partnership. Terry's assistance helped Bruce fend off the gang, and in turn, Terry discovered the hidden entrance to the Batcave. However, as fate would have it, Warren was taken out by the corrupt CEO Derek Powers, who had taken over Wayne Powers. Terry's pursuit of answers led him back to Wayne Manor, where he found himself demanding information and eventually taking matters into his own hands. He audaciously stole a Batman suit and confronted Powers, proving himself more than capable. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Really helps us out, and I appreciate it. At number 9 is Iron Lad. The current big bad of the MCU was a hero at one point in his many alternate timelines. And while Kang the Conqueror has had more identities than there are timelines in the multiverse, at one point he was a protector rather than a conqueror. In the year 3016, Nathaniel Richards, also known as Kang the Conqueror, is saved by his future self from a lethal assault by bullies. This pivotal event alters his path towards villainy. See, Nathaniel is bestowed by his future Kang the Conqueror self with new armor and catches a glimpse of his future as Kang the Conqueror. However, instead of embracing this identity, he rebels against his future self and employs the armor to travel back in time to modern day Earth, specifically the 616 reality. Upon arriving, Nathaniel discovers the disseminated Avengers Mansion, a result of Scarlet Witch's descent into madness. Despite his efforts to travel further back into time, he encounters the remains of Vision, and so by linking into Vision's systems, he assimilates all of his programs, including a fail-safe plan to form a new team of Avengers in case the original team disbands or faces destruction. Adopting the moniker Iron Lad, Nathaniel Richards assembles the Young Avengers, modeling his armor after Iron Man. Later on, Kang returns to the present seeking Iron Lad, intending to send him back to his own time to prevent further disruption in the time stream. Engaging in a battle with the Young Avengers, Kang gains the upper hand until Iron Lad unexpectedly impales him from behind with a sword. This act leads to further reality disturbances, prompting Iron Lad to realize that he must accept his future as Kang the Conqueror in order to reverse the disruptions in time. Before returning to 3016, his memory is erased and his armor is removed. While the Young Avengers lose a member in Young Kang, his armor fuses with Vision's programming, resulting in a new Vision on the team. At number 8 is Future State Superman. Yeah, you heard me right, Superman is on this list, and I'm sure you don't need me to remind you how powerful Superman is in the present, but in the future state? Not so much. Imagine, if you will, a future in which personal information is exploited to portray the Justice League, leading to their catastrophic breakup. And if that's not bad enough, Superman finds himself impaled with kryptonite, imprisoned in a kryptonite chamber, and subjected to bizarre experiments by a character named Mr. Toad. And if that's not a hefty enough dose of mystery, fast forward a bit more, and Superman's son, John Kent, has taken over the mantle of Metropolis Savior, leaving Kal-El to be trapped by Mongol in a grueling battle arena within Warworld. This leaves Superman completely depowered, forced to fight endlessly for his life until his inevitable demise, only to be resurrected by Mongol, pushing him to fight ceaselessly. But Superman's spirit doesn't waver. He becomes a beacon of hope, rallying other captives to rebel against their tyrannical master.
Number 7, the Immortal. Due to an accident that happened approximately 3,000 years ago, the man who became Invincible's Immortal was exposed to an unknown anomaly that gave him superhuman abilities that put him almost on par with Viltrumites, making him one of 3 known beings in the universe that can make that claim. But outside of his incredible strength, speed, durability, stamina, and flight powers, the Immortal is, you guessed it, immortal. Able to regenerate at an insanely fast rate, regrowing limbs and organs, not needing food, water, or oxygen to survive, and being immune to all poisons, toxins, venoms, viruses, bacteria, parasites, pathogens, and allergens. However, funnily enough, there is a way to, quote, kill him. If the Immortal's head is separated from his torso, it needs to be manually reattached for his healing factor to activate. But despite that, even when they aren't attached, he still remains perfectly preserved until the reattachment happens. He's been around for so long that he has been a knight, possibly under King Arthur as Lancelot, an explorer under or possibly as Christopher Columbus in the Spanish Armada. He fought in the American Revolution, became president of the United States by taking the alias of this guy you may know called Abraham Lincoln, and he fought as a soldier in the First World War. In the 1930s is when he officially became a superhero and more recently became became a member of the Guardians of the Globe.
At number 6 is Phoenix. We begin with an abandoned infant named Firehair left to her own devices at a place aptly named the Burnt Place. It wasn't a cozy nursery, mind you, but a clearing where xenophobic tribes tried to sacrifice anyone who manifested appearances which strayed from their norm, in this case the child's red hair. The abandoned infant found herself being raised by an unlikely family, a pack of wolves. Wolves! The original guardians of the forest. Perhaps a canine paw father is what every superhero needs. One fateful day, Firehair's solitude was interrupted by a floating man who conversed through thoughts. No need for that pesky small talk. This floating mentor, which Firehair fondly dubbed as the High Walker, introduced her to a congregation of adopted mutants called the Tribe Without Fear, offering refuge and training. Fast forward, and Firehair's psychic abilities awakened just in time to sound the alarm about an impending attack from the xenophobes from earlier. As the High Walker faced off against the invading tribesmen, Firehair's psyche is overwhelmed by the storm of human emotion. Sadly, the High Walker meets his end while trying to calm her. Firehair fainted as her fellow pupils gave into rage and fought the attacking tribesmen, resulting in the demise of everyone present save for herself. Firehair blamed herself for her mentor and friend's demise and was overcome with despair, contemplating turning her powers on herself to unalive herself, returning to the Burnt Place to be eaten by buzzards. As she lay awaiting her demise, the Phoenix Force, an ancient cosmic entity with a penchant for turning planets into cinder, who had created the Burnt Place when it first arrived on Earth, bonds with Firehair, having been drawn to her raw and untapped psychic power. Consumed by a vengeful rage, Firehair almost gave in to the bloodlust and became a Dark Phoenix, but she was pacified thanks to the one who had saved her as an infant, her paw father, if you will. From that day forward, she would take a page out of the wolf playbook and decide to protect the weak rather than lay waste to the universe. Realizing the threat that beings such as herself posed to the integrity of Earth, she began assembling a team of supernatural and mystically augmented heroes to protect the nation's humanity from both outside threats and themselves, and thus founding the Avengers of the Stone Age.
Number 5. Exodus. Grand Duke Benny du Perry was a 12th century nobleman from medieval France in Marvel Comics. Does that count as ancient? I don't know anyone who's around then, so I'm taking it and running with it. What are you gonna do about it? Nothing, because I'm just an image on your screen. As an adult, Benet was a crusader for the Knights Templar sent to Jerusalem during the Crusades, and he even became best friends with Eobard Garrington, aka the Black Knight of that era. The two had set out on a quest to find the Tower of Power, which is a stupid name, when his abilities manifested after an encounter with the Phoenix Force, which were then improved further thanks to the mutant apocalypse. But thanks to Big Blue, Exodus was trapped in a tomb until the modern day, when he was awoken by Magneto and joined his cause. Exodus is one of the most powerful psionic mutants in existence, with such a pristine use of telekinesis and telepathy that he can even alter electrons and molecules. His power is so strong that Marvel even had to debuff him by making his powers dependent on his or others' level of faith in this mutant, although he still regularly kicks some serious butt.
At number 4 is Agamotto. Now, speaking of ancient superheroes, let's uncover a figure whose power and influence might just leave you spellbound. No, he's not your everyday magician pulling rabbits out of hats. We're talking about the cosmic conjurer who would give Doctor Strange a run for his money. Imagine being tutored by a deity, Oshurdur no less, the literal elder goddess of Earth. But Agamotto wasn't just a student, he went on to become Earth's very first Sorcerer Supreme. Agamotto would go on to face cosmic threats like the Fallen, and yes, even Dormammu, which he thwarted alongside the Stone Age Avengers. Now let's talk artifacts. The legend of Agamotto was like an Indiana Jones fever dream, as he'd created magical treasures that would make a dragon's hoard look like pocket change. First off, we got the eyes, that's right, eyes plural, of Agamotto. You might remember one of those as the pendant in Doctor Strange's possession that guards the Time Stone. Well, Agamotto made not one, not two, but 3 of them bad boys. But their intended purpose wasn't meant to guard Infinity Stones or serve as reading glasses. These peepers could pierce through dimensions, unlocking knowledge that could make Google's search engine blush. Ever heard of the Book of Vishanti? Yup, that was Agamotto's brainchild too, an enchanted book that's like Wikipedia but for spells. Agamotto went from being a mere mortal sorcerer supreme to being a bona fide higher being, a principality. Essentially, imagine a being so magically advanced that you become a go-to power source for other sorcerers, sort of like being the neighborhood electrician for the mystical realm. So there you have it, Agamotto, the ancient superhero who wasn't just reading spells from a dusty book, he was writing them into that dusty book, shaping the very fabric of reality, defending Earth from cosmic threats, and leaving behind a trail of magical breadcrumbs for future sorcerers to follow.
Number 3. Starbrand Vin. The Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that influenced human behavior to the extent that he has unified the people of his world world as a single hive mind. Earth 541 is the home of a Starbrand bearer who has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedoms. Thing is, what the Starbrand is capable of is dependent on its wielder's imagination. When it first showed up on Earth, it was millions and millions of years ago, coming down with a meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, but in doing so, it bonded itself to a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is absolutely awesome. After a few millions of years though, that T-Rex had gone belly up, and the Starbrand found a new bearer in the form of a caveman named Vin. It's just VNN, I don't know why it's pronounced like that. Interestingly though, when Vin came upon the Starbrand and used it to join up with the Avengers 1 million BC, he was actually more analogous to like the Hulk, at least in his looks, and he had a more primitive use of the Starbrand than other future bearers. But he did live on the moon for a bit and help fight a Celestial, so don't get it twisted, he did more than just punch stuff.
At number 2 is the first Black Panther. Meet Mosi, a member of the Black Panther tribe in the legendary land of Wakanda. Now, he wasn't the first of his tribe to munch on the heart-shaped herb, but he was the first to survive the experience as he caught the attention of a powerful entity known as Bast, the Panther Spirit. And let me tell you folks, that wasn't your ordinary herbal experience. We're in ancient Wakanda after all, not modern Canada. With Bast's blessing, Mosi became the very first Black Panther. Talk about leveling up. It was around this time that Earth was dealing with some cosmic turbulence courtesy of a meteor from the Vega system. The rifts it opened up started inviting all sorts of extraterrestrial nasties like the Brood to the neighborhood. Not one to let his tribe become an all-you-can-eat buffet for these cosmic creeps, Mosi stepped in as Wakanda's defender-in-chief. And guess who else decided to crash the party? None other than Odin Borisson, the Asgardian bigwig himself. Now Odin wasn't exactly known for tossing around compliments like confetti, but he had to admit he was pretty darn impressed with Mosi's moral moxie. And if that wasn't enough, get this, Mosi was the first person after Odin to ever lift Mjolnir, proving his worthiness during the first encounter with the rest of the Stone Age Avengers. Mosi and his crew sealed away a colossal celestial, saving the day like it was just another Wednesday. They faced off against cosmic villains like Mephisto and Schuma Gorath, making your average supervillain seem about as threatening as a fluffy kitten. But alas, all good things must come to an end. Mosi met his match in a battle against the children of Laufey and Hive, and his sacrifice marked the end of this ancient Avengers era. The team disbanded with Mosi's demise, and also caused the Wakandan people to retreat from the outside world, requesting that the Avengers forget their existence. The nation would then segment into tribes and were not reunited again until the rise of the second Black Panther, Alumo Bashenga.
And finally, in at number 1 today is Mr. Majestic. DC Comics' Mr. Majestic, also known as Magistros, is a character of immense power and capability that often surprises readers with the extent of his abilities. Hailing from an advanced alien race known as the Cherubim, Majestic possesses superhuman strength, speed, and durability that rivals even the mightiest of superheroes. Unlike the lesser cast, however, he is a Cherubim of Imperial blood, meaning he has a host of cosmic tier physical and mental abilities. Majestic has demonstrated the power to manipulate matter and energy at a molecular level, able to discharge any manner of energy he has on hand however he sees fit, rearranging the subatomic structure of objects, or charging his fists with energy to increase his punching strength. Speaking of strength though, he has rearranged most of the planets in the solar system by just pushing them from his own power, and has crushed graphite into diamonds in order to pay for a meal, which those two things are very, very different. On top of all of that though, Majestic is basically Wildstorm's analog for Superman and shares a lot of the same abilities as the Man of Steel. And when interacting with the rest of the DC multiverse, he's considered to be an alternate Earth Superman. Oh, and he makes this list because, being a Cherubim, he is about 10,000 years old.
Coming in at number 10, we have Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl. While sharing the same Kryptonian heritage as her more famous cousin Kal-El, for some reason Kara isn't often placed on the same pedestal of awe and power that fans will often place Superman upon. This would be a massive mistake, however, as Supergirl has been shown to be just as strong, fast, and capable as her cousin. And in storylines taking place early in the Man of Steel's career, the more experienced and older Kara has even been said by Batman to be capable of surpassing Superman's strength. While an arm wrestling match these days might end in a draw, it just goes to show that the power of Krypton is still going strong throughout the DC universe. Coming in at number 9, we have Barry Allen, aka The Flash. Barry Allen may be known far and wide for being the fastest man alive, but his mastery of the Speed Force allows him far more interesting and more powerful abilities than merely running really fast. While running near the speed of light, a single punch from the Flash carries the strength of a white dwarf star, and the Flash's body is one of the most durable on a planet filled with metahumans, as he needs that durability to be able to survive the tremendous speeds that he travels at. So much more goes into being the Flash than just blinding speed, a mistake that the Rogues Gallery has made way too many times. Coming in at number 8, we have the Swamp Thing. While at first glance the Swamp Thing may appear to just be an unreasonably strong monster covered in wet moss, in reality Alec Holland is so much more. As an avatar of the green, a primordial force that flows throughout all plant life, Swamp Thing is capable of controlling any form of plant life in the entire universe, whether local to the planet Earth or not. This also includes his own plant matter composed body, which he can alter into any plant he thinks of and can create any form of toxin that he wishes to surprise attack enemies with. Perhaps the most interesting power of the Swamp Thing, however, is his immortality, because as long as there exists some plant life on planet Earth, Alec Holland will have somewhere to house his consciousness and grow into another humanoid Swamp Thing.
At number 7 is Space Punisher. In an alternate universe, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, takes revenge to a whole new level. Dubbed the Space Punisher in Earth 12091, his family's demise at the Six-Fingered Hand ignites a cosmic vendetta. He later confronts a bizarre lineup of foes. Blood Queen, Brood Queen, she's history. Sabretooth and Deadpool, they're gone too, and so is Hulk. The quest leads to Avengers Planet, a clash with Jarvis and Galactus' gear, and an ultimate showdown with the Watchers. In this dimension, Frank Castle's transformation to the Space Punisher is a cosmic saga of retribution. At number 6 is the infamous Dr. Doom. Wait, what? Yeah, you heard me right! This Doom is a superhero. In the year 2099, the twist of fate has our favorite metal-clad villain stepping into the limelight as a hero. And mind you, there's not just one, but 3 versions of Doom to shake it up in the future. Now it might be a tad confusing, so buckle up. First, we got our Victor Von Doom that we all know and love, spruced up a bit with no scars and a hint of youthfulness. But there's also an imposter, Eric Cerny, lurking around with a villainous intentions. A brainwashed pretender, if you will. And then, as a cherry on top, there's Tiger Wilde, a cyborg ruler of Liberia, giving that unmistakable Doomish vibe with his metallic exterior and affinity for ruling with an iron fist. Now as the dust settles, the real Doom emerges victorious, and he ends up hatching plans to conquer the good old US of A. But before you label him the next tyrant, hold your judgment, because his intentions are surprisingly heroic, on a mission to topple the mega corporations that have hijacked the nation, controlling every nook and cranny of existence. But Dr. Doom is pulling all the stops, using his genius and, dare I say, newfound heroism to reshape the future. At number 5 is Wave Rider, originally known as Matthew Wider, once a human scientist in a world ruled by the oppressive Monarch. Monarch had eradicated all of Earth's superheroes and crushed the will of its people. Inspired by a childhood rescue by the enigmatic hero Bennett Dilly, Rider decided to fight back against Monarch's tyrannical reign. Throughout an experimental process, Rider transformed into the Wave Rider, gaining the ability to freely traverse time. As Wave Rider, he possessed the power to merge with individuals and glimpse their most probable future. Following Monarch's eventual defeat, Wave Rider continued to employ his temporal abilities to aid others throughout the time stream. However, his endeavors often brought him into conflict with the Linear Men, a group tasked with preserving the integrity of time. At number 4 is the Cosmic Ghost Rider. Imagine a future where the Avengers couldn't save the day, and where Thanos emerges victorious in a truly chilling way. Enter the Cosmic Ghost Rider, a character with a backstory that's as grim as it gets. Cosmic Ghost Rider was once Frank Castle, the Punisher. Yeah, that's right. This list is serving up not 1, but 2 Punishers from space. He became the Spirit of Vengeance, only to return to Earth after it had been reduced to a lifeless wasteland. In a desperate attempt to thwart Thanos, he embraced the role of a Herald of Galactus, wielding the mighty power Cosmic. But even this power couldn't undo Thanos' stranglehold on existence. In a shocking twist, Cosmic Ghost Rider switches sides, joining forces with the very tyrant he once fought. At number 3 is Bishop. Bishop is a mutant hailing from an alternate dystopian future. You know, it's not uncommon for mutants to have a thing coming from various bleak futures, but Bishop takes the cake. Lucas Bishop is a mutant from a dystopian future where he has time traveled to join the legendary mutants he'd only heard legends of, the X-Men. In his original future timeline, mutants are confined to camps, and the X-Men, along with Professor X, have all bitten the bullet. Bishop and his sister Shard were born in one of these camps and branded with M tattoos above their eyes for identification. Later on, serving in the mutant police force called XSE, Bishop traveled back in time while pursuing a criminal named Fitzroy. Joining the X-Men, Bishop reevaluated his upbringing and found support and a sense of family among the X-Men. At one point, however, Bishop betrayed the X-Men after the birth of Hope, the mutant messiah, who was believed to have caused the persecution of mutants in Bishop's future. I mean, Bishop's past, which is the future for everyone else. Time travel, am I right? At number 2, Booster Gold. Booster Gold, also known as Michael Carter, is a time-traveling superhero hailing from the 25th century. Armed with advanced technology, he fights crime with the help of his robotic sidekick Skeets. His closest ally is Blue Beetle, and together they form a dynamic duo. However, due to his carefree and somewhat self-centered nature, Booster Gold is often not taken seriously by his peers, leading to frequent underestimation. In his origin story, Michael was a talented college football player who resorted to gambling on his own games to cover his mother's medical expenses. Despite his intention to quit after settling the bills, his father compelled him to continue the scam. Eventually, he was caught and banned from football. Forced to work as a night janitor, he eventually robbed the museum where he was employed, stealing all kinds of time travel tech, and then proceeded to escape into the 21st century, seeking fame and fortune as a superhero. And at number 1 is Spider-Man 2099. Working for Alchemax in 2099, Miguel became increasingly dissatisfied with the corporation's control over the city. Pressured by Tyler Stone, Miguel reluctantly tested a genetic coding process on a subject named Mr. Sims, resulting in Sims transforming into a grotesque creature and passing away. Fed up with Alchemax, Miguel attempted to quit, but was tricked into consuming a hallucinogenic substance called Rapture, which bonded to his DNA. This substance was manufactured solely by Alchemax, and Stone expected Miguel to remain dependent on it. And so in order to break free from the addiction, Miguel decided to undergo the same genetic procedure that eliminated Sims, using his own original genetic code as a baseline. However, his supervisor, Aaron Delgado, sabotaged the process in an attempt to eliminate him. Despite the sabotage, Miguel survived the procedure with his DNA fused with spider genes, granting him various powers and freeing him from his Rapture addiction.
Number 10, Jimmy Olsen. What can I say about Jimmy Olsen that I haven't said already? Honestly, probably a lot. While Jimmy might just be a human photographer and Superman's mere mortal best pal, he's also had more wacky adventures than I can even keep track of. Also, before we get any further in, just a disclaimer that these are actually being ranked less on actual power level, so it's not like the most powerful is at the top, and more on level of surprise in regards to how powerful these supporting characters are. Now, while Jimmy Olsen might be a surprising character to be included here, for others this one is likely an expected pick. Jimmy Olsen not only has the charm to woo multiple astounding women, including a fifth-dimensional imp, Supergirl, and even though it was a ploy, also kind of Harley Quinn. Not only does he have an impressive army of exes, but he has also been as powerful as Superman before. That's right! And even more impressive, Jimmy was strong enough to walk away from that power, recognizing its danger. For a brief time, Jimmy was also a secret agent known as Secret Agent 55. During his time as a secret agent, he also proved himself to be a fierce opponent in hand-to-hand combat, successfully fighting against and defeating a bunch of villainous secret agents. Not only has Jimmy dated a ton of powerful women, become as powerful as Superman, and acted as a secret agent, but he also has been transformed multiple times into extremely powerful creatures. If it's something that's been done in the comics, Jimmy Olsen has likely also already done it at some point. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you do love when we rank things in terms of power, not like necessarily we're doing here, although we are talking about some of the most powerful characters, be sure to check out our top 10 most powerful playlist. Number 9, Foggy Nelson. The unkillable Foggy Nelson should be. While he might be dead currently in the comics, having been revealed to have been dead since Fisk's men attacked him, and fading away when the Hand's talisman, which had brought both him and Stick back, was destroyed, Foggy Nelson has actually died multiple times over. Granted, many times this was because his death was faked, not because the Hand resurrected him, but often it was only after he was mourned that we'd actually even learn that the death wasn't a real death. I mean, at one point, Matt was literally blamed for Foggy's demise by his mother, so even she seemingly wasn't in on it, which made his end seem pretty finite, pretty real at the time. So while he is currently dead, I'm pretty certain he'll be back because no matter what happens, death or drama, Foggy always comes back and always ends up as Matt's #1 confidant again. Not only is Foggy seemingly able to evade death on loop, which for a mortal lawyer is pretty impressive, but he also at one point campaigned for and succeeded in becoming the district attorney, which I think is pretty impressive. Number 8, Zodiac. Zodiac is a blast from the past. He was a villain who was first introduced in 2010, but only recently reappeared in the comics, pledging to become Moon Knight's sworn nemesis. A very different vibe from Raoul Bushman, honestly. Zodiac reminds me more of Joker or Deadpool when it comes to his antics. He's both brilliant, but also criminally insane. But it is his penchant for creative and deadly thinking that makes him honestly so dangerous. Like when he took on Moon Knight's ally, Reese, a vampire, not with a cross around his neck, but instead wearing his own name around his neck, as he clarified that it actually wasn't the cross vampires were weak to, it was faith, and Zodiac believes devoutly in only one thing: Zodiac. Number 7. Tyler Stone. Alchemax is a future villainous corporation from the 2099 Marvel Universe of Earth 928. But of course, a corporation is only ever as evil as the people behind it. One of which is, of course, Tyler Stone, the vice president of Alchemax's R&D department. Tyler Stone is not only VP of Research and Development at Alchemax, but he is also secretly Miguel O'Hara's, aka Spider-Man 2099's, biological father. Miguel doesn't learn until later on that he is Stone's son, and ends up working for Alchemax as a brilliant geneticist. When he tries to leave, however, it is Stone who slips him the highly addictive and expensive substance, Rapture, made exclusively by Alchemax, to prevent him from leaving. Fortunately, Miguel manages to free himself by becoming his own experimental test subject, accidentally becoming the spider-like hero, Spider-Man 2099.
Coming in at number 6, we have Bane, the villain who broke the bat. A brilliant tactical warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically eliminated Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and proving that Bane isn't just about pure physical strength, but that he's also a ruthless and brutal strategist as well, even willing to kill Alfred Pennyworth just to emotionally shatter Damian Wayne. It just goes to show that you should never ever underestimate Bane. Coming in at number 5, we have Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The owner of the Iceberg Lounge, perhaps the most famous criminal hangout in all of Gotham City, the Penguin might look similar to his namesake, but is far more deadly in reality. While an impressive crime lord even without any superhuman enhancements, the Penguin is made extra deadly by the special umbrella he carries, which is always stuffed to the brim with different lethal gadgets to help him fight against Batman or any other supervillain that seems interested in starting a turf war. This unpredictability and Oswald's sanity not quite being all there make the Penguin an incredibly difficult opponent to read, hiding the fact that this crime lord is far more dangerous than he initially appears. Coming in at number 4, we've got the reality warping Batmite. A troublesome imp from the same 5th dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Batmite is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending Batmite back to his own dimension is usually a tall order given his complete reality warping powers, but luckily the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit Batmite and send him packing to where he truly belongs. However, 5th dimensional beings have nearly limitless power within our regular 3-dimensional universe, meaning that Batmite should probably have a close eye kept on him in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur Brown, aka the Clue Master. Not to be confused with the similarly themed Riddler, the Clue Master is a former game show host who wound up turning to crime in order to pay the bills. The father of Batman ally Spoiler, the Clue Master for a time seemed to embrace the role of being a second-rate supervillain, before it was eventually revealed that his status as a Riddler ripoff was actually intentional, and that organizing Batman's more underrated foes was his master plan all along to avoid detection. It's not often that a villain is able to temporarily outwit the Caped Crusader, and Clue Master shows just how powerful the right man with a plan can become. Coming in at number 2, we've got Poison Ivy. Born under the name of Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the planet Earth, and especially values it over human life. While well known for being able to control plants and utilizing poisonous kisses as a weapon, Ivy's powers may be beyond what she usually shows off. In a particularly noteworthy storyline, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population of Earth through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic as to how that would work, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Batman Who Laughs. In a dark alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his iconic foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce Wayne is infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flips his moral compass, but leaves intact all of his intelligence and tactical planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman, this supervillain is Bruce Wayne's worst nightmare come to life, and was able to become so powerful over the course of his war against the multiverse that he was only able to be defeated by a literal God mode powered Wonder Woman.
And at 10, Rainbow Raider. The reason that all the good guys are good is because of their morals. Because they channel their anger into something positive. Because they can control themselves. But what happens when a hero with powers like Superman is filled with a red-hot rage? Well, we saw it in Injustice. But someone able to cause those emotions, that person being Rainbow Raider, makes them pretty damn powerful. Rainbow Raider's power is derived entirely from their special goggles, okay? Which allows him to project solid beams of rainbow-colored light that he can either use offensively or as a slide for travel, and he can also coat people in certain colors of light to induce emotions, like blue for sadness, red for anger. There's also the Rainbow Raiders, a team of super color-themed villains that also have powers based on the color of their rainbow. However, just the ability to induce emotion by covering someone in light is enough to make Roy G. Bigelow pretty damn powerful. If all my rage came out and I had super speed, damn, people would have to like hide in fear, but it wouldn't matter because I would find them. And at 9, Zoom. I included a CW character on this list specifically for the guy in my DMs who told me to stop doing it. The CW version of Zoom was not exactly what everyone was expecting, although you have to admit he is one of the best and scariest villains in the Arrowverse to date. The sheer demonic look he had, especially with the suit, shook even me. However, thanks to the Velocity 9 that he was taking, Hunter Zolomon was incredibly fast, the fastest we had ever seen at that point. So fast even that in order to fight him, Barry had to take speed out of the equation. And during the final fight, Barry had to create a time remnant because he wasn't fast enough to stop Zoom with only one of him. It only got worse after Zoom kidnapped Wally and Barry had to give Zoom his speed in order to get Wally back. This only made Zoom faster. It gets even worse when in the final fight the Time Wraiths come out of the Speed Force and take Zoom, which changes him into the Black Flash, and then he gets supercharged by the Speed Force to become the living embodiment of death for all speedsters. Plus, I mean, this guy was able to create breaches at will to bring hundreds of metahumans over to Earth 1. That's pretty damn impressive. And at 8, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, alias Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend. Cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs, Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof. The duo fell into the lab space below, with Allen landing amid the chemicals that gave, presumably, Earth 1 Barry his speed. Something in this incident, probably the chemicals, granted him his super speed, and he went on to become a super criminal alongside his girlfriend, who had also been given powers. While his girlfriend took on the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. The couple joined the crime syndicate at some point after this, and they ran through Central City, answering to no one, until one day the White House burned, around the time of Darkseid's incursion onto Earth Prime. The being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of supercriminals formed to find a way to safety. So yeah, it's basically just Barry Allen, but Earth 3. I say that's pretty overpowered. And at 7, Weather Wizard. Meteorological madman known as the Weather Wizard was a menace to both Barry Allen and Wally West's Flash, and one of the most overpowered supercriminals they've ever faced. First appearing in 1959's The Flash number 110, criminal Mark Martin armed himself with the Weather Wand, an advanced piece of technology which could control like atoms in the universe, some form of energy, okay? Martin took the wand from his deceased brother, a scientist who never intended it to leave his lab. With some modifications, it became a deadly weapon for the criminal, and at full power, the wand could summon lightning storms, rain clouds, or change the weather entirely. Whatever the weather was, Martin could use his mighty powers to rob banks and cause mass panic. A later reimagining of the Weather Wizard would see him instead granted the metahuman ability to control the elements without using the wand. And the Weather Wizard also appeared in the CW's Flash TV show as one of the many metahumans created by the particle accelerator explosion which gave Barry Allen his powers. However, on the show there are two versions, one of them appearing in the first episode which Joe West killed, and the second appearing in the 16th episode of that season, with the second one being the first's older brother, the Martin brothers, Clyde being the first one and Mark being the second and the proper Weather Wizard. As Cisco said, he's been waiting to use that name since day one.
Number 6. Zombie Ant-Man. In the Marvel Zombies world, Black Panther was one of the sole survivors when the zombies first attacked, and turned most of his friends into zombified versions of themselves. One such former friend, Hank Pym, actually just managed to trick T'Challa into coming with him. Or well, he almost did. Either way, Hank managed to trick T'Challa enough to get him to a place where he could basically incapacitate him and then hide him away. Having already begun to change himself, Hank basically planned to use Black Panther, his friend, as a food source. Because Hank is a genius, which means when he's a zombie, he's a really dangerous genius. Hank kept him locked away and alive while slowly savoring and devouring his friend. Fortunately, Black Panther would escape and even become the leader of a land of survivors, although he would eventually turn into a zombie himself, much later on. But lesson learned, watch out for zombie Hank Pym if there's a zombie apocalypse. Number 5. Taskmaster. In the comics, Tony Masters is Taskmaster, and he is well known as an Avengers villain. And it is through his clashes with that team that Taskmaster also became a recurring villain of Hawkeye as well. Now, you might not know it to just look at Taskmaster, but the two have had some pretty epic fights over the years, with Masters himself also possessing marksmanship skills to rival that of, get this, Hawkeye himself, and also being known as a villain who is proficient with the use of a bow and trick arrows. In the comics, Taskmaster has an eidetic memory, or a photographic memory, that also extends to him being able to replicate pretty much any abilities or skill sets that he sees. So while he can also mimic Hawkeye's skills and abilities, he can also match the fighting style of pretty much anyone he watches, as well as learn their specific skill set too just from watching it, as long as it isn't a superpower specific skill like, you know, flying. Taskmaster is also known for being a brilliant tactician as a mercenary, and often uses strategic thinking to take down opponents who are more powerful than him, which is why he's one you honestly need to watch out for. Number 4. Xemnu. Xemnu is also known as the Living Hulk, and is a being that uses hypnosis powers to take control of others' minds. On more than one occasion, he has attempted to use these powers to try and conquer Earth and bend the minds of its entire populace to his will. In fact, while he's also attempted this feat in the pages of Immortal Hulk, this was also something he tried in his very first appearance. Back then he was trying to mind control the human race in order to get them to build a ship to basically return him home. Doesn't sound like such an evil plan until you realize the force that the ship would have to create would basically rip the Earth asunder once that ship took off, due to the great force that it would need for that launch. So, pretty evil. Number 3. High Evolutionary. As we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the High Evolutionary is truly a villain to be feared. And honestly, when I found out that the High Evolutionary was going to be in the MCU, I was like, man, that's gonna be lame, because on paper, he's another kind of silly character, especially when you consider that he's often used as a scapegoat for retcons, bizarre origins, and honestly pretty weird plot points. The fact remains though, the High Evolutionary, as the film proves, is truly the be-all and end-all of Marvel's mad science department, and the god complex he has in the MCU basically sums up so beautifully what is so frightening about him when you really think about it. He thinks he's perfecting life, when really he's basically warping and polluting it. Number 2. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and while he might not look that intimidating, he's definitely proven himself to be deadly in the past. Initially, Thanos was hunting down Thane because he feared Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's basically afraid that Thane will rise up and overtake him, but in the end this wasn't something that Thanos really had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after he became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to somehow defeat Thane. And this was also at a point when Thanos seemed himself to kind of be dying. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or at least until some writer remembers he's still down there and decides to pull him back up again. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son, and are also pretty OP, I gotta say. He had a death touch ability that, while untamed, basically killed anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which honestly sounds awful. Honestly, while he's in prison for now, I'd watch out whenever he gets out of that god quarry and is free again. Number 1, Monarch. I feel like we're always sleeping somewhat on Jamie Braddock here, and we honestly don't talk about him enough, so I'm gonna bump him up to the top spot this time around. Monarch, to you. Monarch is known for his reality warping powers, and while not always a villain, most of the time in the comics he has basically been a villain. What makes him different from other reality warping characters, and namely mutants out there? Monarch's powers work on a quantum level, and although there are people who can influence Monarch's powers by manipulating his mind, he also is pretty powerful as someone who can basically just make things happen by thinking them into existence. Yeah. He is the elder brother of twins Brian and Elizabeth Braddock, but despite being related to heroes, he seldom is one himself.
At number 10, it's kind of obvious, Aquaman. One might overlook the depths of appreciation for Aquaman within the Justice League. Sure, his capability to communicate with marine life might seem pretty niche, but let's reel in the bigger picture. The oceans cover about 70% of our planet, harboring uncharted territories and mysteries. Aquaman isn't just some guy who talks to fish. He's the bridge between those two worlds, a literal middle ground between humanity and the mysterious deep. His trident isn't just a fancy fork, you guys. It controls tides, wields immense power, and symbolizes authority. I mean, just think about it. The Justice League isn't just about battling supervillains, it's also about safeguarding Earth's entire spectrum, both above and below the waves. So perhaps it's finally time we give Aquaman the recognition he deserves for his role as an unsung guardian of not just our cities, but also our oceans. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I really appreciate it. At number 9, Dr. Light. Dr. Light, no, not the villainous one. We're shining a light on Kimiyo Hoshi, the heroic version. During Crisis on Infinite Earths, Hoshi got a cosmic power-up courtesy of the Monitor. But she didn't just twiddle her thumbs after that. Oh no, she actually joined forces with John Kent's League. Fast forward to a mission with Damian Wayne where her true potential ignited. She latched onto her powers like a life buoy in the Sea of Trouble, seizing the Great Darkness's link to the Dark Army. And using her cosmic juju, she was able to keep the wonky multiverse in check. Like, imagine the multiverse like a Jenga tower on a shaky table. That's Dark Crisis for you. But thanks to Dr. Light's intervention, that tower stood up tall. At number 8 is Martian Manhunter. When it comes to the Justice League, we often find ourselves focusing on the big names like the iconic Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, but let's not forget about the underrated gem in the lineup, Mr. Martian Manhunter. John Johns, as he's known on his Mars block, boasts an impressive record. He's been a steadfast member since the League's inception, a fact that might even surprise the most dedicated fans of the superhero world. While he took a brief hiatus to deal with his own rogues gallery in Metropolis, Martian Manhunter proved his mettle when the chips were down. The Dark Army threat called him back into action alongside his super buddies, and there he stood resolute and ready. In an ultimate showdown, he, like other heroes, met his quote-unquote demise, only to triumph through the chaos, showing us that his place was never in question. John Johns, the shape-shifting, telepathic powerhouse, truly deserves a spotlight among Earth's mightiest heroes.
Number 7, Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is one of, if not the greatest martial artist on Earth. He was trained from birth to become the ultimate warrior. He can take on multiple opponents at once and can even defeat people much more superhumanly powerful than he is. In fact, in the White Hot Room, when the Phoenix organized a tournament to pick who would be the new host, the only reason that Shang-Chi lost was because he refused to take someone's life, having him expelled from that tournament. He is particularly skilled in Chinese martial arts, but his skill branches out to many other forms of martial arts as well. In one case, he even worked with Spider-Man to create a new martial art based on Peter's powers. Shang-Chi also is able to manipulate Chi energy, which he can use to enhance his strength and durability, and can even detect others based on their energy, like he did when he detected a psionically masked Jean Grey. But Shang-Chi gets a much more significant boost of power when he's using the 10 rings. He can use those rings as projectiles, manipulate their size, and use them him to levitate or even fly. The rings grant the martial master superhuman strength, durability, speed, and stamina, and he can even manipulate the energies from the rings to do many other things as well. And then, just to top it all off, thanks to the other side of his heritage, Shang-Chi inherited his mother's psionic abilities to communicate with his blood relatives, even the deceased ones. Freaky. Number 6. Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart is a hero you may not have heard of, or maybe you have, I don't know. What I do know is that Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist, a scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid. In a tragic comic book backstory, that fluid was exposed to Jack and it gave him his awesome but difficult to control abilities. Importantly, he was also part alien, with his mother hailing from the Contraxian race. Now, due to his cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts can use his zero energy blast to fly at speeds currently not specifically known, but he has flown halfway across the United States in 3 minutes flat, which is pretty fast. His biological structure was reformed to basically give him the superhuman starter pack abilities, but his strength has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. He also went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, which is really cool, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from deep recesses of his brain, which is also really cool. Number 5. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, stands as one of Marvel Comics' most formidable heavyweights. Not only does he have immense physical strength, but he also ranks among the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. He's an underutilized character who happens to be one of my personal favorites. His origin story unfolds in the tumultuous 1960s amid a groundbreaking project centered on utilizing antimatter as an energy source. However, an unforeseen explosion during the experiment forever changed Adam and his close friend, Connor. The cataclysmic event transformed Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, giving him extraordinary superhuman abilities. Embracing his powers, he assumed the mantle of the Blue Marvel, a masked hero dedicated to safeguarding the world, but tragically, Connor's fate took a darker turn as he became Anti-Man, a villain. Their epic clashes reached a climax during one unforgettable battle when the Blue Marvel's mask was torn away, revealing his identity as an African-American hero. In the racially charged climate of the 1960s America, President John F. Kennedy urged him to retire prematurely to alleviate tensions. It wasn't until decades later that he came back as a full-on superhero and kicked some serious butt in the Avengers. Number 4. Circe. Circe is a member of the Eternals, an evolutionary offshoot of humanity gifted with amazing powers and abilities to look after the human race through the ages, which is similar but also just a smidgen bit different from the Eternals' movie counterparts. As an Eternal, Circe's body is augmented by cosmic energy and she has total mental control over her entire molecular structure, which allows her and other Eternals to be immortal, indestructible, and invulnerable to pretty much anything. Circe has enough strength to bench 20 tons, but thanks to her telekinesis, she can augment that to lift about 25 tons. She can also fly at around 760 miles per hour, which is, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty dang fast. She can project cosmic energy, has telepathy that allows her to hypnotize weak-minded fools, but she can also teleport, but she hates it, and she is even able to project images from her mind, which is such a cool idea for an ability. Those are all the powers that we don't see in the Eternals movie, because arguably the ability she has the most talent in is her matter transmutation ability, which allows Circe to transmute nearly any item or being into almost whatever she wants them to be. Among the Eternals, she has the highest ranking of power with this ability, and it allows her to self-heal any injury she does actually sustain, which aren't many because she's awesome. Number 3. Luke Cage. Criminal turned unstoppable superhero is quite the feat, but Luke Cage handles that with grace, becoming a pillar of his community and even eventually becoming mayor of New York itself. Whenever I think of Luke Cage, the word unstoppable is what actually comes to mind. I just think of him as this big brick wall just standing in the way of anyone who would try to harm anyone else. Luke went through a super soldier experiment known as the Burstein process, which increased his cellular regeneration rate. This means that Luke was given a level of super strength that, with training and experience, has made him strong enough to lift 50 tons. But there have been times where he's exceeded that, and this strength lets him perform thunderclaps, leap incredible distances, and he's been able to grab onto the back of an aeroplane and force it to come to a complete stop. That is nuts. Alongside his strength, he was obviously given superhuman stamina to match with that, but most know him for his nigh invulnerability. Luke's skin, muscles, and bone tissue are about as hard as titanium steel, making him basically immune to bullets and blades. He can withstand hits of around 1 ton and blasts of 150 pounds of TNT, but those numbers wax and wane depending on the story. He has taken hits from people far stronger than himself and survived falls from 90 stories up. If Peter Parker is the heart of New York, Luke Cage is basically like the Wall. Number 2. Wasp. Traditionally, the Wasp has been considered one of the less powerful members of the Avengers. Her unique abilities, which include shrinking, flight, and emitting energy blasts through her Wasp sting, are undeniably formidable, yet individually they might be classified as street-level powers. In the presence of iconic figures like Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man, few anticipated that the Wasp would rise to prominence within the team's ranks. However, the Wasp defied those expectations in remarkable fashion. She achieved the distinction of becoming the first woman to lead the Avengers ever, a feat that astonished her teammates and fans alike. Her years of experience endowed her with wisdom and capabilities that far exceed the sum of her individual powers. The Wasp's mastery of her abilities, coupled with her intelligence and resourcefulness, transformed her into a formidable hero who surpassed the expectations of everyone who had ever underestimated her. And finally, in at number 1 today is Protector. Novar, also known as the Protector, is an extraterrestrial figure who carries a bit of a renegade reputation. In a remarkable display of his power, he once took down both Thor and Captain Marvel simultaneously, an impressive feat by any measure. However, it's worth noting that many readers may not be familiar with the character of the Protector, as Novar has gained more substantial recognition among fans as Marvel Boy, particularly through his involvement with the Young Avengers. Hailing from Earth 200080 as a Kree super soldier, Novar has since laid claim to the vast universe of Earth 616 as his own. His unique set of powers include, and I'm not joking, explosive fingernails, psychedelic saliva, wall-crawling abilities, heightened senses, and a remarkable conscious control over various bodily functions, among other powers. Novar's prowess in combat is truly formidable, a trait that certainly captured the attention of his teammate turned lover, Hercules. In shedding his Avengers affiliation and the Protector moniker, Novar has found his true calling and thrived as a member of the Young Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, and has even transitioned into the role of an interstellar diplomat and a Guardian of the Galaxy.
Number 10. Dupe. Dupe is one of the X-Men who is known for being pretty ridiculous, and as such, a lot of people do not take Dupe seriously at all, which also extends to Dupe's power levels. However, I would argue that Dupe is actually one of the most powerful X-Men ever, who is simply grossly underrated due to his nonsensical appearance and depiction. Dupe has powers that allow him to influence the emotions of others, perform magic, resurrect, travel in the liminal space between comic book panels, shatter the fourth wall as he pleases, and honestly, so much more. I think perhaps this is the reason, in fact, that he doesn't appear as often in the comics, and therefore isn't as appreciated for his powers by fans. He's just too crazy. He's just too powerful. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when we talk about X-Men, I know I love it, be sure that you click that subscribe button, ring that bell so you do not miss out whenever we are talking about all the X-Men goodness. Number 9. Tempest. Tempest could literally undo anyone in the blink of an eye, like she did with Matthew Malloy, who was set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in almost all of existence, I would say. His reality bending was honestly off the charts, and yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents never met. Ho-ho. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. Her powers earned her a place on Krakoa's Five, a team created for the purpose of handling all mutant resurrections. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Number 8. Juggernaut. Juggernaut, a well-known X-Men antagonist, is widely regarded as one of the most powerful characters in the comics. Even though he is not a mutant, he became a member of the X-Men team after losing most of his abilities due to a dispute with Sidorak and seeking reconciliation with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. Interestingly, Interestingly, Juggernaut managed to form many friendships during his time with the X-Men. When I say that Juggy is underrated, I don't necessarily mean as a powerful character. I think we all know how powerful and dangerous Juggernaut can be. I personally would not want to face him, that is for sure. But when it comes to him as a member of the X-Men, I feel like this is often overlooked and that overall he's a somewhat underrated member of the team in terms of what he brings to it. And I don't just mean in terms of his powers.
At number 7 is John Constantine. Enter John Constantine, the unassuming yet pivotal member of the Justice League. Nestled within the DC universe, his mastery over the arcane and his sharp wit are his greatest assets. Constantine's recent exploits with the Justice League Dark demonstrates his prowess in thwarting even the most menacing of adversaries. His instrumental role in quelling Merlin's earth-threatening havoc showcased his resourcefulness. But it's not just about the supernatural. When the cataclysmic onslaught by Pyrrha on the multiverse unraveled, Constantine's significance truly shone. United with the League's unconventional champions, he orchestrated a daring expedition into the Starheart. This voyage unearthed the elusive ties between Pyrrha and the looming Great Darkness, unraveling a truth vital to preserving the cosmos. So without Constantine's calculated audacity, the unraveling of this intricate tapestry might have remained an unrealized endeavor. At number 6 is Detective Chimp. Detective Chimp, a seemingly unconventional member of the Justice League Dark, often flies under the radar. Nestled within DC's magical realm, Detective Chimp's inclusion might appear puzzling at first glance, yet he's a strategic asset with a rich history. Having intertwined with the Shadow Pact, he actively combated the Spectre and assumed leadership. His saga continued as he merged into the JLD, significantly contributing to toppling the enigmatic Upside Down Man. Engagements against mystical adversaries like Merlin and Xanadoth further underscore his prowess. What's remarkable is that Detective Chimp lacks innate magic. His power lies in his encyclopedic insights and deductive prowess. A nonchalant chimp on a couch with a beer might not scream hero, but this tale resonates with the essence of heroism, leveraging what you possess in unexpected ways. At number 5 is Black Canary. DC's trove of superhero houses some major players, yet few shine as brilliantly as Black Canary. Striding confidently in her signature leather jacket and fishnets, she exudes a unique aura. A formidable Justice League member, she's no stranger to clashing with villains like the Royal Flush Gang and Xanadoth. Do any of you nerds remember the Pyrrha incident? Well, it didn't end well, and thanks to Barry Allen, she returned to the fray. At number 4 is Zatanna. DC Comics is a realm brimming with Caped Crusaders and superpowered saviors, and harbors an array of mystical manipulators, none more captivatingly enigmatic than Zatanna. When the formidable Wonder Woman found herself momentarily absent, it was Zatanna who gracefully shouldered the mantle of command, guiding the Justice League Dark. Her pivotal role in orchestrating the League's standoff against the sinister Merlin can't be understated. Amidst all this arcane chaos, she deliberately relinquished control, a calculated gambit that culminated in Merlin's undoing. But this was merely the tip of her metaphysical iceberg. See, Zatanna emerged as a linchpin in the League's conquest against the formidable Xanadoth, locking horns with Pyrrha and his nefarious Dark Army. With unwavering mettle, she showcased why she deserved the crown of the League's unsung champion. Throughout all of last year, Zatanna became omnipresent, an indomitable force safeguarding the multiverse, and an unsung sentinel shaping destinies with every uttered incantation. At number 3 is Hippolyta. Hippolyta is a formidable Amazonian warrior, proud and strong. Her introduction into the Justice League as a beacon of hope and might was anticipated by many. But alas, the anticipation doesn't always translate into reality. You see, Hippolyta's presence within the League remained akin to a whisper in the tempest, overshadowed by the cosmic machinations of Perpetua and the enigmatic Batman who laughs. But fear not, for every star has its moment to gleam. Enter Wonder Woman Historia, a tapestry woven in the loom of imagination. Within its pages, Hippolyta emerges not as a mere figure in the background, but as a central force. We traverse her ancient battles, her defiance against mighty Zeus, and her valiant struggle to emancipate women from their tormentors. In this alternate avenue, Hippolyta illuminates the narrative with deserved radiance, proving that even obscured stars can blaze anew. At number 2 is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, a symbol of strength and justice who has been a cornerstone of the Justice League, yet her pivotal role often goes unnoticed. In 2022, her journey across the multiverse and involvement in the trial of the Amazons showcased her resilience. Stepping back from leading the Justice League Dark, she aided both the leagues against the formidable Xanadoth, and notably, her contribution in the showdown against Pyrrha and the Dark Army stuck out. Rescued by Barry Allen, she emerged in the final battle, emphasizing her unwavering commitment. Although in this series her time in the League was limited, the quality of her actions spoke volumes. costumes. Wonder Woman's return marked a turning point, spotlighting her often underrated significance in safeguarding the League and the broader universe. And at number 1 is Green Arrow. Green Arrow often finds himself lurking in the shadows of the limelight, but let's not underestimate the gravity of his contributions. So you see, 2022 was a really good year for Green Arrow. Not content with mere archery prowess, he silently bankrolled the League's operations, an unsung hero in the financial realm. When the Royal Flush King and Xanadoth posed threats, there he stood, bow drawn, ready for action. His devotion went beyond the battlefield. When Black Canary was summoned to the Hall of Heroes, uninvited was he, yet a resolute in companionship. Pyrrha's ominous Dark Army meets its match, and eventually Pyrrha's ominous Dark Army met its match as the battle ensued. Yet it was Green Arrow's sacrifice that tipped the scales, obliterating Pyrrha's machinery and securing triumph. It just goes to show that superhuman strength isn't always about flashy costumes and booming catchphrases, so the next time you find yourself pondering the capabilities of these unsung heroes, let's remember that sometimes it's the quieter, less celebrated members who possess astonishing abilities beyond what meets the eye. And as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the superhero world, let's always keep that sense of wonder alive, because you never know what incredible feats might be lurking just around the corner, ready to amaze us.
Coming in at number 10 today is the Silver Surfer. The Surfer was originally Norrin Radd, an astronomer from the planet Zen-La. When Radd discovered that Galactus, the devourer of worlds, had come to devour Zen-La's life force, Radd struck a deal with the cosmic entity to seek out uninhabited planets that Galactus could consume. Eventually, Galactus became aware of Earth, our little green planet, and he set out to make it his next meal. The Surfer arrived just in time to warn the Fantastic Four of Galactus' arrival, which was his initial reveal into the universe of Marvel Comics in Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50. And that started a great relationship between the Surfer and the superhero family. The Silver Surfer's adventures often center on philosophical conundrums as much as physical challenges, and Stan Lee has used the Surfer as a vessel to express some of the writer's own worldviews. But why is he on the list of ancient heroes? Well, we don't actually have a specific birth year for Norrin Radd, but the Silver Surfer himself has stated that it has been a millennia since he was first transformed by Galactus, and he was a mature member of his species when that happened. And that species is a long-lived one, so it's very safe to say that the Silver Surfer is quite old indeed. Number 9. Mystique. To some of us humans, hundreds of years ago feels just as ancient as millions of years ago. Maybe. The Marvel mutant known as Mystique, while you wouldn't think it, has stated that she was not born in the last century and that she's actually over 100 years old. Mystique has a very complex and unrevealed origin. Like, Marvel started by introducing her and have only given us brief moments where she has shown up in the timeline prior to that. So, this point is more so cobbling together various things she and others has said that point to her being quite freaking old. Mystique has been known to be with her wife, Destiny, by 1895, and she stated that, quote, "Solitude was my natural state for 100 years, which basically implies that she was born before 1800. In 1921, she met Logan in Kansas City, and they all worked together in Scotland shortly before World War II, but in an early appearance in Uncanny X-Men number 170, Mystique dreamt that she was in the year 1783, which is specified as being 170 years before her birth. As the comic was published in 1983, this would make her 30 years old at the time of the story, but that has since been retconned. So as I said, it's a little convoluted. Despite the fact that it is unknown when exactly she was born, it can be assumed that Mystique was born in the month of September, because apparently her birthstone is a sapphire. Twinning. While she might not be as ancient as others on this list, she is still much older than you think, and an incredibly hard mutant to bring down.
Number 8. Rotath of Lemuria. Rotath of Lemuria is a common example of how magic was presented, often in stories that take place in the Hyborian Age, especially in regards to Conan's story there. He made his first appearance in issue number 37 of Conan the Barbarian from the 1970s, when almost everyone who read comics or otherwise was into the sword and sorcery genre. In this same issue, Rotath was killed by Kull after he was hired by the king of Lemuria, who was frightened of Rotath's power. As he died, Rotath cursed both the king and Kull, casting a spell so that he might return, and so he did. This time in a golden body, but still he ended up being defeated here. This time not by Kull directly, but instead by, well, a giant slug after fighting against Conan and Schuma. This is a true story, by the way. Man, I hate when I get defeated by giant slugs.
Ah, the slugs, man, they get
Slugs.
you. It's funny because all you need is like a little bit. All you need is like a little bit of table salt.
Yes.
Take that sucker off the board. Alright, number 7, Yuga Khan. Yuga Khan is the first ever tyrannical ruler of the planet of Apocalypse, and the father of both Drax, who would become the Infinity Man, and Uxas, who would become Darkseid. Given his nature as essentially a god and one that fathered the current gods, quote unquote, Yuga Khan is certainly ancient, being essentially immortal. As an example, before the fourth world is even fully formed, Yuga Khan alongside his wife Hegra and their sons ruled Apocalypse, creating one of the most feared empires in the entire universe. But being such an astronomically powerful being, it wasn't enough. Yuga Khan was obsessed with becoming the most powerful being in the universe and wanted to be able to essentially control it all. But he was also obsessed with finding out the reason for why it all existed in the first place. So he's a conqueror, but also a philosopher, which is nice. This obsession is what brought him to the Source Wall, getting trapped in it while trying to unravel the mysteries of the Source. All the inhabitants of New Genesis are way stronger, faster, and smarter than humans, being almost all on a level akin to Superman, while also being immortal, but Yuga Khan, he is the most powerful of them all. So much so that after an absolutely colossal effort, Yuga Khan was even able to break free of the Source Wall. That act released energies that could be felt throughout the galaxy and caused the universe itself to shake. He then replenished his power by absorbing the entire life force of the planet Velos and all its inhabitants, and then did the same thing with millions of other worlds while on his way back to Apocalypse. His return to Apocalypse made everyone tremble, including its current ruler, his own son, Darkseid, who he imprisoned in the core of the planet. Most recently though, Yuga Khan was one of the beings empowering Shazam during Darkseid War.
Mine are so Conan. I went really Conan with this list.
I respect that though.
I mean, there's lots of old guys, cause
Mine are all like spacey.
yeah, it's so true though. Space is old. Number 6, Red Death. Also known as Kandra, Red Death currently has a very Scarlet Witch looking vibe going on, and I gotta say, I'm feeling it. And just like Scarlet Witch, she is not someone who you should underestimate. Kandra is part of the Externals, and while she isn't one of the most memorable of that mutant villain team, she's still someone who is super powerful. Technically, just being an External comes with a pretty big dose of power. The Externals, not to be confused with Marvel's Eternals, a different team entirely, are a group of immortal mutants basically. They have had various roles throughout history. One more prominent one that folks might remember Kandra from is her role as benefactress, when we learned of her history with Gambit and the Thieves and Assassins Guilds of New Orleans during Gambit's miniseries. In fact, that was actually where Kandra first was introduced in the comics, making her initial appearance in Gambit issue number 1 from the 1993 miniseries. Although the way they approach that introduction, you wouldn't necessarily maybe know that that was her first appearance, because she kind of shows up like, you know me, I'm Kandra. And I'm like, do we know you? Who are you? But it's alright, she's pretty powerful. Number 5, Moira X. Moira was at one point powerful enough to have almost successfully wiped out all mutants. If it weren't for Mystique and Destiny, she would have succeeded. Even though she claimed during that past life that she only intended to create a cure to offer it to those who wanted it, Destiny knew that any mutant cure would essentially become weaponized and then forced on mutants, regardless of their own wants and desires. For those who haven't been reading along recently with the events of the current X-Men line of comics, it was revealed that Moira herself was actually a mutant whose powers were basically reincarnation in her own form. Basically, she dies and then she comes back to life as like a baby and lives her life again. But when Moira dies, she ends up being reborn as herself, but with all the memories of that past life. As such, Moira wasn't just a dangerous potential villain for the X-Men, but kind of the whole of 616, which also seems to be tied to Moira's current life, which I believe is her 10th life. Pretty crazy stuff. Moira is no longer a mutant after being cured in the 2021 Inferno series when Mystique shot her with a gun of Forge's design, which basically turns mutants into humans. But she still is a dangerous woman with a lot of information. And it was heavily implied that the creation of Krakoa was kind of all about eventually ridding the world of mutants over time, with Krakoa being like their last hurrah in terms of Moira's plan. Time will tell if Moira becomes more villainous, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did, just based on where she was heading in this story. And when or if that does happen, you better watch out. Danger is the Danger Room. The Danger Room is a villain who surfaced because they were basically being mistreated by Professor X, who had decided to ignore the fact that the training room had become sentient and was itself a technologically based mutant. Eventually, Danger decided, enough of this shit. It's time to get some sweet, sweet revenge. The crazy thing about Danger is although we don't think of her too much, she really would be a pretty strong opponent to the X-Men considering she trained them, and as such would know their strengths and weaknesses. In fact, I think that even is mentioned in the comics at one point. She was also considered to be an extinction level threat that caused Steve Rogers great worry in Heroic Age X-Men, which is kinda like a glimpse into his tactical commentary diary. So if you wanted to read that, it exists. So despite not thinking about Danger too much, we all probably should in case she ever decides to, go the villain route again. Destroy everyone. Because she could probably do that. Extinction level, friends. Number 3, Mystique. Mystique is someone who isn't particularly or at least outwardly powerful when it comes to what she's capable of or her power set, and for this reason, many people have taken to underestimating her abilities. Here's why we'd advise against that. Inferno, issue number 4. In the newest Inferno series, it's revealed that while Mystique tried to play by Krakoa's rules, when she learned she wasn't going to get what she wanted from Magneto and Professor X, no matter what she did in the name of the Mutant Nation, she decided to take matters into her own hands, as Mystique so often does. Disguising herself as many different people, she was able to easily ensure that Destiny was resurrected, against the wishes of the heads of the Quiet Council. She also put into motion plans to make sure that Destiny would garner a spot on the Quiet Council, and then she almost was successful in enacting revenge on Moira X for keeping her love, Destiny, from her. Mystique here proves that not only is her power set OP, but really that her mind and sense of cunning is what makes her so dangerous, and definitely not someone to be underestimated. Number 2, Destiny. Destiny has to be one of the most underestimated villains in recent years in comics. We have seen her resurface as a considerably dangerous villain in the current X books, and I'm personally loving it. Destiny was dead for quite a few years and actually got to mostly stay dead for much of them. Her mutant power allows her to see potential futures. She can see things that might come to pass, and it seems as though the more likely the future becomes, the clearer her vision of it is. She can also see more immediate futures when in the middle of a conflict. It was because of this power and Moira's personal grudge against and fear of Destiny that she remained unresurrected. But something you really shouldn't underestimate when it comes to Destiny is the power of love. Mystique was already told by Destiny before her death that if there came a time when mutants could be resurrected and they refused to bring her back, that Mystique should basically burn this new world to the ground. And Mystique's love of Destiny gave her the motivation to basically bring Krakoa to its knees with her machinations to not only return Destiny, but also put her in a position of power. Precogs and love are a powerful mix. Number 1, Madeline Pryor. Of course, I have to include the Goblin Queen. Madeline Pryor is a woman who seems to easily be forgotten and shelved, which is surprising considering how great of a threat she posed in the original Inferno event. Currently in the comics, Madeline Pryor is making a comeback, returning at the end of the Hellion series after being killed as part of the comic's first arc. The Madeline Pryor that was killed was definitely feeling pretty evil and threatened to destroy the entire Hellions team before they even started. The returning Madeline, who has been resurrected by the Five, is at least putting on appearances that she's more level-headed, but in reality it seems the dark side of her still bubbles just beneath. Madeline Pryor has threatened the entire world with her dark rituals and demon pacts before, and she's a clone of Jean, so although she often gets forgotten and downplayed, she really shouldn't be considering just how dangerous and powerful she is, because Jean is also that and Maddie is also that too. She has the potential at least. Often people try to downplay Maddie because she's a Sinister created clone, but that feels very unfair to me. She's also got like a spark of the Phoenix Force in her, so should that count for something? I think so.